Marvin Devine. I'm saying bye to all the lies and all the times you cried, saying that I wasn't right, yet I was right by your side. You manipulator, playing games, your friends commentators, and I don't know what you say about our private conversations, but it's got them hating. Thanks to all the rumors you be claiming. It's cool, I'm done with you, so they can throw you a celebration. You gon' hate it when you see me with somebody living better. I'm trying to tell you that me just doing me gon' have you jealous.
Welcome back, folks. I see Heinrich Gneda is over in the chat saying, just like the Sandef, hurry up and wait. Well, good things come to those who wait. Thank you for your patience. This is a conversation that Charmaine, I think, reached out to me originally and asked if she and Chanell can have with me to talk about Afrikaner refugee groups and pages, something that I've cautioned people about becoming involved in because of all the kakprat, the uninformed bullshitters, the people looking for attention that think they're going to make money. Well, look at me. I can start a Facebook or a YouTube channel. And look, I'm going to make money because I'm an Afrikaner in America now and all this other stuff. And so a lot of misinformation has come from those groups, a lot of nonsense, and people who are righteously indignant. They're right. Some of you may remember the Operation Pet Lift debacle that took place, in which people came into my group and claimed falsely that it cost just $200 to send a pet to America. And I simply said, that's impossible. I sent my cats. It cost me about $6,000 to send them both ways. You can't possibly send a pet over here for $200. And then they wanted to argue in the chat. And then they went in their groups and called me a liar and said I was misleading people. Of course, they were so full of crap, their eyes were brown. Anyway, so we dealt with that situation. And since then, there's been a lot of misinformation in these groups. However, these young ladies have reached out to me and said they started a page recently on Facebook, I believe. We'll talk about it in a second. And they're trying to get the right information. So they proposed something different. It's been a while since anyone other than Chris Sten has interviewed me. By the way, all those news channels out there, I am available on occasion. Chris Sten is always interviewed me of late. And this is not really an interview with them, but more along the lines of what this was always intended to be, the Indaba conversation with Chris. It's going to be a conversation. So I'm going to ask them questions to set the table, and then they're going to bring the main course and ask me questions that they think people would like to know the answer to. So with that, we're going to get started. Thank you to the 252 people who have already shown up on an unannounced live broadcast on a Sunday. I was going to ask you why you aren't in church, but church is over, so you guys are excused. Okay. All right. With that, at the top of the screen, we have Chanell. At the bottom, we have Charmaine. So let's start with Chanell. Chanell, welcome to the program. Good to see both of you here.
Thank you so much, Colonel. Thank you for having us and affording us this opportunity to gather extra and additional and not so additional information from you. So we thank you.
Well, I'll do my best, but of course, I'm going to tease some information out of you guys because I don't think most people know who the heck you are. So, Charmaine, you guys started something. Tell us a little bit about what that is.
Sorry, so we started a Facebook group. Chanell and I were both admins on a different Facebook group, and it just went a little bit sideways. So we decided to start our own Facebook group, like Chanell said, just over 3 weeks ago, or just over 2 weeks ago. We're going on 3 weeks now, and we don't have a very big group. We've just got over 300 followers right now, but to us, it's not about how many followers or members we have, but rather about the information that we are sharing. But Chanell actually prepared a whole intro and a whole introduction about our group and who we are and everything. So okay. I'll give it back to her.
All right, we'll do that. No, you don't give it back to her. It's up to me. I'm giving it back to her. It's my show. All right. No, that's fine. But I mean, I can't neglect you. During, as you'll see, you guys, it's your first time doing this. The host has to find a way to bring all the guests in. Otherwise, it becomes dominated and people are just sitting there like, what am I doing here? Anyway, no. So it's up to you, Chanell. You've got the floor. Tell us about the Facebook group.
Yes, I prepared something because I have OCD. So obviously, we don't want to tap into too much what happened with the other group, but we were called, I was called the Gestapo and FBI, and we were then banned and blocked from that group. And then that's when we actually made a joke and said maybe we should just start our own group. And a day later, we started the group, and, it's just a space where members could feel safe, respected, informed, and we try and focus on verified information. And I always tell everyone, if Colonel Wyatt or Professor G have not said anything about this, then according to me, it's not verified. So that's what we try and keep within the group. We don't allow any questions or any links or any posts if they don't send a verified link to myself or Charmaine so we can have a look at it.
All right, so what's the name of the page on Facebook? What do you call it?
So it's Freedom Path. So let me just have a look here. So Freedom Path Afrikaner Refugees USA.
Okay, and how are people finding out about it? It's just because it's on Facebook and they haven't come across it, or is it word of mouth? Are people sharing it?
From the other groups. From the other groups where they called me Gestapo, most of those people joined. And then also there's another lovely group that because obviously we are part of a lot of groups, but there's one specific group that actually shared our group's information and, suggested the members go follow us as well, because, our alignment of what we want for Afrikaner refugees is obviously the same. So, yeah.
All right. Excellent. So you talk about a safe space, and that's a good question. I want to talk about that because people have become, people accuse others of being Nazis on stuff. And I'll tell you that the behavior of an awful lot of people online in these groups is absolutely obnoxious. And I don't mean to throw shade on Afrikaners, but we're talking about Afrikaners in particular who act as if they're the gatekeepers and they know all the information and only they're the people. And if you say anything, they bounce you. I mean, quite frankly, for a program that's designed for people who are suffering from persecution or trying to help each other, this is why I have to tell you that 70% of the email messages, WhatsApp, and Telegrams I get begging for information or telling me this or trying to inform me that I'm wrong about things are misinformation shared in these groups. And I find it highly annoying. So as you've noticed, since about the time you mentioned your group, which I didn't know existed, I've been telling people to get out of these groups, to stay away from them because they're toxic for your health. It sounds to me, Charmaine, that the group that you guys were both in was toxic for you and that's why you left.
Yes, definitely. We didn't leave by choice. We were actually trying to get the group, if I can say, more under control. We were removing comments and removing people who were arguing and sharing misinformation and things like that. So we were actually trying to get it to what our group is right now. But then, we were kicked off the group.
We were told we are hurting the group, Colonel. That's the main thing. And we were just trying to create order. People were just all over the place and you could see they were lost. And I'm a very straightforward person and I just wanted to create, it's actually because of me that we were banned and deleted from the group because I wanted to create order. But, if that's what they want and they are okay with the chaos, then they can have it by all means.
So the two of you didn't know each other prior to this, did you? You just knew each other by becoming moderators in this group?
Yes.
Okay. So, sorry, I just, something got caught there. That mustache is a little too long, like a walrus to trim it back. All right. So I just sent Professor G an invitation. I don't know if he's available to join us. I know he's watching the chat, but if he'd like, the link is there. He can join us. He says, yeah, he can. His wife is yelling to get moving for church. Wait a second. Who's Jewish here? That's Jewish is yesterday, man. Maybe there's a Christian in the family. I'll leave it at that. We won't intrude into his personal life. I had a feeling he wouldn't be able, but I did send him a link just in case he could join us. That would have been fantastic to have him join us right now. But people have so he's one of the people I'm admonishing for not being in church. Oh, okay. Converted for love. Oh, that's sweet. Okay. All right. Well, and of course he's not at the same time as me, so it is church time here in the it's 9 a.m. where he's at, so they are getting ready to go to church. So it's good to see Professor G in here. All right, guys. What's been the reception so far, Chanell? I mean, you say about 300 people, and you're not worried about numbers. You're just worried about getting the right information. And what exactly are you sharing in the group?
So I love educating myself, and if I'm not sure about something, I either go onto your channel to see if you've done something, regarding whatever I'm searching, or if Professor G has done it.
Wait, you watch Professor G's channel?
I do, yes.
Treason! This is over. Bye. No, just kidding.
I did my hair for you, Colonel. You can't just let me go, So I always try and verify as far as I can. And that's actually going to be one of my questions I want to pose to you a little bit later is, with regards to reliable sources and all of that. So I'm very into US politics and everything. So one, obviously Fox News is banned in South Africa. We cannot access that unless it's online. So I have the Fox News channel. I don't like CNN at all because their narratives are always, turned around a bit. But if I really have to, I can make up my own mind whether I want to agree or trust what CNN says. So we post about the shutdown and, anything related to the flights or anything you've mentioned. And I think Professor G is actually he's going to block me soon on Facebook, because every time someone says something, then I'll tell them, but Professor G already confirmed this, and then I tag him. So we just try and keep our side clean as possible, so no one can turn around, because and not our group, I have to say our members are amazing. But what I've seen with the other groups, you say the grass is green, but now there's a little bit of brown in the grass, and they flip it around. You said this, you said that. So that's why we always try and just keep it as clean as possible and as truthful as possible with the correct information that we have.
Okay. All right. Well, that's kind of an opening introduction to get a feel for what we're talking about here. Once again, if you're just tuning in now to the 360 plus people listening and watching, this is Chanell at the top and Charmaine at the bottom. They started a Facebook group because they were bounced as being Nazis from another group. As moderators, people got angry with them. So they started their own group. And of course, I've been telling people to stay out of these groups. So this is interesting that I have a conversation with them on a lovely Sunday here in the fall on the East Coast and springtime in South Africa. So now you guys wanted to ask me questions, and that's kind of how this is going to be the Indaba conversation. Now, I reserve the right to interrupt or not answer, to come back to ask you a question. But as we go along, so it'll be a conversation, not just one-sided thing. So Charmaine, do you have a question for me about the program or about anything? My favorite color is purple.
Mine too.
She's sucking up to teacher. What'd you say, Charmaine? Is it your favorite color too?
So one of the questions that was asked, and I know you have also previously answered this before, on the group she mentioned earlier on that we work with them, there was a member who confirmed that they were actually denied after they've been through for their USCIS interviews. They say they don't have criminal records, they don't have any medical issues, they don't have dual citizenship. So the question comes, in your opinion, what would be reason for them being denied, or possible reasons for others to be denied?
Absolutely a fantastic question. And without the exact circumstances, exact case, I can't answer what the reason is. What I can say is that I seriously doubt they were actually denied. First off, you must be notified in formal writing, and I've confirmed that. Now, I know that they're supposed to inform you in writing that you've been denied, just like you get a provisional approval letter. If you're approved, you get a denial letter. I have yet to meet anyone of the, I would say, over 10,000 to 15,000 people who've contacted me about the program and put statements of interest in. And see, that's how I can confirm how many people have done it, based on assuming they're all telling me the truth. And of the probably roughly about 2,000 people I'm in current contact with, this is over the past 8 months, people have contacted me. Not a single person has told me they've been denied. I've heard from groups, it's another reason why these groups are toxic. People come in the groups, they say, I've been denied, and they don't tell you anything. Oh, they didn't tell me anything. Well, I call bullshit, because you won't be denied unless you're told why. So if anybody tells you that, I call bullshit. And if you're watching this, you say to Colonel, then you're welcome to contact me, and we can do an offline interview, or we can do an on-air interview and we can talk about it. But you will be given a reason why you're denied. They don't just go, you don't get it. This isn't like applying for a job in South Africa because you're white, you'll never hear back from anybody. That isn't how this works. So, and we've got confirmation of that now. So that's my first problem. Now, why would people be denied? Now, Professor G, love him, started a crap storm last month unintentionally by answering an innocent question in which people hear what they want to hear, and they ran off and did it. And then they accused Professor G of making claims he never made. I watched his video, but maybe he wasn't as nuanced as just a good country boy like me. So I'll try to be a little more nuanced, because he's an attorney. They use that highfalutin language, gets people confused. So if you're still here, Professor G, I'm talking bad about you, okay? No, but seriously. All right, so that was about former military service. Someone contacted and said that they would get denied because they were serving in the military. I've said this from the very beginning. You will not be denied refugee status for service in the military, particularly in a conscript military, a military or police service, unless you committed a human rights violation or you were a participant in a crime or you're a criminal of some sort. If you were in the SAPs and you went in the townships and you murdered people in 1985, we're going to find out about that. If you think we're not, then you're foolish. I've talked to 3 refugees who went through processing this week, and they've contacted me. I had a phone call with one of them. They're like, Colonel Wyatt, everything you've told us was 100% true, 100% true. They knew about the fact that I used to hold a passport from this country. They asked me why I didn't renew that passport 25 years ago. 25 years ago, they knew that person had a passport from a third country. So as I said, do not lie. If you serve the military, they'll know about it. Now, they don't have to know about, what you did behind the bandstand, when you were 18 years old. That's not what we're talking about. But significant actions in your life, they're going to know about. So be forthcoming, be honest. If you're not forthcoming and honest, then you're going to get in trouble. An act of omission is an act of commission when it comes to this process. You have to tell the truth, and that includes now. I mean, if I get people that are overly sensitive, and I appreciate that. I have a charge against me. I got to turn that off. Sorry, that's the Mad Max's. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to get to something real quick here. Mad Max just gave me something that I was going to get to. You're stealing my thunder, Mad Max, but since you paid 35 Rand, I'm not going to complain. Clouds are gathering. All right, so I'll get to that in a second. Clouds are gathering. Tata, are you listening, Tata? The clouds are gathering. Munir. Anyway, so they will give you a reason. Also, if you've been denied this process, and this is why I know they're all bullshitters. They're all full of crap saying they've been denied. These are cockprodders trying to dissuade people from doing it. If you've been denied, what do you get? Those in the chat, see what Mad Max just said. You get 90 days to appeal it. To appeal it. So none of them said they appealed it, did they? None of them said they were offered the opportunity to appeal. So that means they're talking out their backside. Mm-hmm. Because if I was legitimately denied and I was upset and I came in your group, I'd say, I've been denied. They said I did this and this and this. It isn't true. They give me 90 days. Now what do I do? Should I get a lawyer to help me? That's what I would do. I mean, that would be my reaction. So it says, we've been told if you're denied, you have 90 days to appeal. If you get denied again, you cannot apply for refugee status again. Yep. Well, I've been telling people there's nothing you can do because I couldn't confirm whether there was, well, no, I'm sorry. I've been telling people there's nothing you can do if you haven't heard from anybody. Because there's no contact number. But as far as being denied, there is an appeal process. So now we can confirm that from what's been told to refugees. So, but it's a one-time appeal and you better have a good basis for it. So anyway, so I think that the people that are saying that they've been denied, I'm calling bullshit. I'm just calling it out. And if they want to call me a liar, then they can come on my program and prove me differently. And if I'm wrong, I'll admit it. But I will say just what I said. I'm calling it bullshitter because they didn't say why they were denied. They didn't say how they were denied. They didn't say they had a right to appeal. They just came in and were bum hurt. All right, does that answer the question?
Thank you.
Yes, it definitely does answer your question. I actually, sorry, when we saw the post, I was speaking with Chanell and I said to her, like, do you believe this? Do you think it's true? Like what now? So she says to me, you know what, we're just seeing the same thing. We'll just add it to one of our questions for Colonel Wyatt.
Okay, it was a very good question. I'm glad you did ask it. All right, so what's up next?
Sorry, Colonel, I just want to add something to that. I actually used USCIS as an example the other day, and then someone said to me, but this is a refugee program. It's not for your B1, B2 visa. But the point I was trying to make with my post that I made was, or the comment that I left on someone else's comment, because they asked, should we divulge all of the information? And I said, before you step into the embassy or the consulate or wherever, USCIS knows exactly.
I've got to take a phone call. You guys keep talking.
Okay. Okay, so they know exactly. I don't know, must I carry on with my question or my answer, my statements? Charmaine? We'll just, I don't know, we'll wait for Colonel Wyatt. It's okay. It's okay, we'll wait for him.
So sorry about that, ladies. That was the Orthopedic Institute of Pennsylvania reminding me on a Sunday that I have an appointment tomorrow. I mean, you would never get that in South Africa. Someone calling you on a Sunday to remind you. It wasn't an automated voice. It was a lady, Shelley.
They hardly call you
at all.
Anyway in
Exactly.
South Africa.
So
You're lucky if they call you.
I just got a phone call because I have an MRI tomorrow to make sure that I don't have muscular damage because they want to take my hip out. I'm refusing, but they still need to see whether I have a torn muscle. Anyway, so they called me on a Sunday. So for the Sunnyside detective who talks about the grass isn't greener in America because she got free cancer care in South Africa, I'm happy for you. Bullet for you, sweetheart. But Charles Van Onselen needs 80,000 Rand because his medical aid won't cover it. So we're doing a buddy. And hey, the grass is greener. It's Sunday. They interrupted me. I'm supposed to be at church right now. And they called me to confirm I got an appointment tomorrow. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, sweetheart. Anyway, I missed your answer. Can you repeat it for me? I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to add to the point that you made that, they know everything about you, because I just wanted to make or give an example. When I went for my B1, B2 visa the second time, because it expired during COVID, so they gave me the waiver to, reapply for it again or renew it. I was going to go teach in China and in Malta. The USCIS agent actually asked me, so how are the plans going for China and Malta? So they know absolutely everything about you before you even say hello. So be truthful, be honest, don't take that chance. Yes, that's all I wanted to say with regards to that.
Yeah, regarding church, Garrett Gillis just told me I'm supposed to be at the gun range. That's after church, Garrett. That comes after church. So what have I told people from very outset in this whole program? I said, be truthful, don't omit things, and act on omissions, act commission. You just have to be honest, and you have to put things. You can't go there and go, well, I've been robbed, I've been raped, I've been assaulted, I've been carjacked. That's not a basis for refugee status. I've told people from that unless it was because of your skin color or being a minority in a group. If you live in a community that's all black and you get targeted all the time for those reasons, crime is committed because you're white solely, no one else gets attacked. Well, if I live in a community of 400 people and 2 families are white, and the only families being robbed and beaten and attacked every week are the white people, obviously there's a racial component to it. But other than that, crime is not a basis. Everyone suffers crime all over the world. And while South Africans feel especially singled out, try living in Moldova, and be a young girl who is attractive and find yourself trafficked as a sex slave before you even know it. So the world suffers from crime. That's not a basis. I've told people that, and I've told people honest. Now, if anyone goes to an interview and they ask you if you know anybody who's American, you tell them Colonel Wyatt, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And if you can tell them what your relationship is, well, the only relationship you have with me, except for a few people, is you watch my program and you might interact in chat. But I don't coach people, and I've never coached people. The only thing we've ever done is we came up with a list of likely sort of questions you might be asked, because people what are they going to ask me? Well, they're not going to ask you what you like to eat for dinner. That's obvious, but they are going to ask you things about your life, your marriage, your divorces, your weddings, any arrests, any criminal convictions, this, that, and the other. Pretty obvious, but a lot of people really lost in the woods, babes in the woods. So we made a checklist, which, I don't know that's all that helpful, but people just demand it. Hendo put that together and I edited it and we put it out. But that's not coaching. We don't coach anybody. You can't prepare for this interview. The only way to prepare for this interview is bring evidence that you've been persecuted. If you've got a email saying you're the best candidate, but we had to hire the black guy. Some people are dumb enough to send you an email like that. So, that's evidence of racial persecution, all right? So print out the email, put it on a thumb drive, take the hard copy, take the thumb drive. If you've got a video of, being assaulted or your kids in the front yard being bullied by other people because they're white, and that's because you're white, you're white trash, and you get out of here. We hate white people, we're going to kill them. Then bring the video on a thumb drive, okay? So that's the only thing I do for people. But I know that I suspect that they're concerned that I'm coaching people. And do you know why they're concerned? Because I know what I'm talking about. I know they're concerned that Colonel Wyatt is coaching refugees. I'm not coaching refugees. I'm just telling them to be honest. And they should thank me, because they haven't been honest and upright. My government telling people what to expect, what the timelines are, what's going on. That's why I'm doing this. I'm not here. I'm not the refugee guy. But as I finally admitted the other day, after Byron from Morning Shot called me the king of the refugees a few months ago, I took exception to it. And I suppose I shouldn't, but I did. I guess I'm a person of note when it comes to the refugee program. Chanell, you were telling me before we got started that I'm quite well known in the refugee community, a big figure. Also, you said I'm a big figure in the Afrikaans community. I found that interesting. I deny it all the time, but I guess it's sort of true.
Well, you definitely are. And like I said before we started this live, I'm extremely starstruck. So it's like I'm having a live with one of my favorite celebrities. So you're a very prominent and respected person within the refugee and the Afrikaner communities. So yes, and the members actually, did ask me that. I just again tell you, thank you very, very much for what you are doing.
Well, you're very welcome, but of course it doesn't come without, good deeds get punished. I've been getting punished left and right. But Chris Wyatt, I've read your message. It's not germane to this conversation. These guys are not involved with that organization. So that's a different conversation for a different topic for another time. I have read it while they were chatting. I am multitasking. Unlike Microsoft, I can handle more than one thing at once. Okay, so it's your turn, Chanell, to ask me a question.
Okay, so Colonel, obviously we are all aware that the US government is under a shutdown, the current shutdown. And obviously we also know it's not stopping, processing of any refugees at the moment, but what it is mainly affecting will be, the travel and the flights and all of that. Could you please, in the simplest terms, explain to us and the members so everyone can just understand why it is under shutdown,
Sure.
what led to it, and what needs to happen for it to end? I think you did do a video about something similar, but we just want everything in one place.
Sure. Before I do that, let me preface this with something that Mariska brought to our attention. Mariska, who's a viewer, popped on and said, no, it's not because there's no money in the authorization. She says because of presidential termination. And I said, and that's not true, but that's a nuanced statement. So what Mariska said is in part true. They don't have the president's report, so technically there can't be a refugee program until he submits to Congress. That's usually delivered in August or September annually about refugees and asylum seekers. I may be wrong, but I don't believe law requires that they have that in order to go forward. But let's pretend that it does, and maybe that's the truth. I'll accept that. But that's not really the issue. The issue is the fact there's no money to be spent. And it's what I exactly said. There are U.S. CIS personnel and PRM people behind the scenes that you'll never meet who have to actually process your case, review it, and adjudicate it. Every case gets adjudicated. Just because you're convicted of treason in South Africa doesn't mean you can't become a refugee. In fact, it might be the reason you become a refugee, because you were unjustly prosecuted or maliciously prosecuted for something you didn't do. And they look into that. Now, it will definitely put up a red flag, and it will slow down your process because the investigation has to be done. But there's adjudicators. So the adjudicators may not be working right now. There's a furlough. Most government workers, except for the military, the air traffic controllers, the Coast Guard, and critical members of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Secret Service, everyone else, and except for, the heads of offices here and there, is not working and not getting paid, by the way. That's another thing. So, and now they've not gotten paid for it, but they'll probably get it in arrears. They usually pay them arrears, so you get a big paycheck, but there's no guarantee. There's no legal requirement to do it, so they might just go without pay for a month. That sucks. And that includes me. In 5 days, I won't get paid. So thankfully, I've paid my mortgage already and my utilities. Now I got to pay my credit card bills. Okay, so that's why refugees aren't being sent to America. They're still being processed, and the reason they're being processed is that the contracts that the two providers that are doing the screening is what's being done now, not the processing onward to America. The screening is being done because there's a big contract out there, and there's two vendors. Those vendors are Church World Services, their subsidiary, the Refugee Support Center, based out of Kenya, Nairobi, I believe. I've never been there, but they're based out of Kenya. The RSC, they were the first ones put on it because the existing vendor who was already approved, and they could start work immediately because they weren't doing anything else because all the other refugees had been suspended when they started this process. Then they brought on this group in South Africa, just a handful of people, the Amerikaners, who formed an organization, and they formed a nonprofit or something like that, or company, whatever it is. They formed something. It's a legal entity now, the Amerikaners, and they were brought on to also process, but they were brought on to process high priority cases that someone flags something because, oh my gosh, look what happened to this family, look what happened here. This needs to get to the front of the queue. So there was a little bit of that from what I understand. But they're also processing cases that aren't. So I think that kind of fell by the wayside because there's just so many cases, and there's a push to get things done. So now on to answer your question specifically. What's the shutdown? How does it happen? The U.S. government, by the Constitution, must have a budget. The budget must be presented by Congress to the president. So we've got three co-equal branches of government in theory. For the last 100 years, they've been a little bit out of balance, but the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. So the Supreme Court, Congress, the House and Senate, and then the president. That's the three branches of government. In theory, each of them has a mechanism to check the other's power, so one does become more powerful. We don't have an imperial presidency. We don't have a Congress that's controlling the presidency. We don't have a Supreme Court that overrules everything illegitimately. So that's the theory. That's why the ambassador for South Africa must be confirmed by the Senate. So the president can pick an ambassador, but that ambassador doesn't go to South Africa until the Senate says, yes, we accept him as the ambassador. That's a check on the president's power. The Congress has a veto. So if the president has a veto, so if Congress sends a bill to the president to spend money and he doesn't agree with it, he can veto it. That means the bill's rejected. Just like in South Africa, it goes back to the Congress. They can override his veto, but they need a 2/3 majority in both houses. And that's not easy to do. So for instance, in the 1980s, Congress sent a sanctions bill to President Reagan to sanction the National Party in South Africa for apartheid. President Reagan vetoed that bill. It was shot down. It went back to Congress, and 2/3 of the House and Senate voted to override it, and it became law, despite the president's view. So we have to have a bill that authorizes spending. Congress sends it to the president. The House approves it. It goes to the Senate, and they approve it. Now, if there's a difference between what the House, because they can mark it up, they call it marking up. They can make changes in it, but it has to be the same when it goes to the president. So if the House starts the bill for the budget and they send it to the Senate and they want to increase or decrease spending, it has to go back to the House in that version and be approved there. And it usually goes back and forth. That's why we haven't a budget in years, because they can't agree on anything. So we get what's called a continuing resolution. A continuing resolution will be a bill, normally a flat bill. All it says is we will continue the current level of spending adjusted for inflation or not adjusted for inflation, something like that. And that way the government can continue. And then the House and Senate will vote on it, go to the president. Now, during President Biden's term, 13 times in that 4 years, the House and Senate voted a flat bill to continue spending at the same levels with inflation. 13 times. The Democrats have now rejected that same measure 12 times since September. 12 times the Republicans in the Senate have presented the same thing the Democrats voted for 4 years in a row, 13 times. And now, and the reason it's for 13 times is because the bill could be for a month, it could be for a year, it could be for 6 months. It just depends when they think they'll be able to work out an agreement, and they go. So this one was supposed to be until November 18th. Well, November 18th is around the corner now. So even if they all vote on it, it's going to expire and they won't be able to spend money again in December. So that's the deal. So until the Senate Democrats capitulate or the Republicans give up and let them spend $1.4 trillion in new spending that's currently not there and there's no money for, burying us in debt and likely pushing us greater towards insolvency and thereby disrupting the entire global financial system and causing a global depression, in my view, we're not going to get anywhere. The Democrats have to give in on this. Probably what will happen at some point is Republicans go, okay, we'll let you spend $300 billion instead of $1.4 trillion. Hopefully they won't, but that's probably what's going to happen. And so once that bill, and this is important consideration too, ladies, once that bill hits the president's desk, whatever the bill is, and he signs it, authorizes the government to continue, or they give him a budget for the whole year. The fiscal year starts 1 October. If they give him that, and that's why this date's so important, our budget authority runs out on the 30th of September every year. That's the fiscal year for the government. So on 1 October, if the Congress hasn't sent a bill which becomes a law when the president signs it before that date, then we can't operate. That's why the shutdown. Now, they can do what I said, a continuing resolution, and they can allow them to continue, but they haven't signed that either. So there's no legal authority for the president to spend money on the government's activities. There are exceptions to that. Social Security checks still go out. The people who collect that money and process it still get it because that's a law that allows for that. That was specifically written into the law. But generally speaking, most things cannot be paid for. So the military can't go on strike. We're not like the South African military. We're not a joke. We're a real military. We don't belong to labor unions. That's ridiculous. So they have to work. They just work and they get paid. Now, there's one more piece to this. A lot of government contracts, and that's where I got off track there. The RSC and the Afrikaners are on an existing contract that is a multi-year contract. Most government contracts are for 1 year. There are exceptions for critical services. This is considered critical service. Therefore, it's usually like a 3-year contract, and then it gets recompeted. So Church World Services was under a contract. I don't know if it runs out this year, next year, or they just got it, but most likely, and it might be a 2-year, it could be a 4-year, but usually it's a 3-year. So that money is still there. There's legal authority to spend the money to pay Church World Services, RSC, and the Amerikaners, who are getting paid for this, by the way. So both those groups continue to get paid. But what happens is that we have no money to pay the employees that are supposed to be processing your case or adjudicating back in the States, receiving you in America, or getting you to the airport safely. Because once you get in this program and we're sending you to America, you're a ward of the U.S. government until you arrive at your final destination. We have to make sure that you have safe travel. We have to make sure the EFF is not there beating you up at the airport in Joburg, that sort of thing. So there'll be someone escorting you. So that's the two reasons. Mariska was partially correct, but Church World Service was disingenuous. They didn't tell the truth. The real issue isn't the PD. The real issue is the money, because the PD won't be submitted until after the budget's approved, because they can't take any action. So there's still people working on it. Anyway, I hope that helps. I got a couple super chats here real quick. Let me get to those very quickly, and then I'll answer your next question. Etienne Broncos says something to help pay your salty cracks since you're not getting paid. Well, thank you, Etienne, for the 350 round. I appreciate that. Gideon, as the Afrikaners like to say, says, thank you all. Excellent interview. And Geo1984 gave 140 rand. Ooh, the super chats already. By the way, we're at 521 viewers, and there's only 252 likes. Look, guys, it's not that hard. You reach down below the video. There's a little button there.
That was easy.
You push it, and it says like. Go ahead and do that. Please get us some likes. The more likes we get, the more chat that's going on in the chat. That's more interaction. That means if a lot of people here, a lot of people are chatting, a lot of likes coming, YouTube's algorithm, which is live right now, will pick up and go, woo, let's put this up on people from South Africa. They want to hear about this. It'll put it on their For You page. All right. Did I answer the question, Chanell?
Yes, you did. Thank you, Colonel. I just want to add,
Okay.
we actually just gained, I think, almost 60 new members to our Facebook group. So thank you.
All right. Now, you're all sitting over here in chat going, I'm not listening to anybody but the Colonel. But then behind my back, you go treasonous and sign up for the group. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. All right. Well, that's good. There you go. All right. Cool. All right. All right. So now I have 60 spies in your camp. You didn't know that.
That's perfect.
Okay. So
We welcome them.
what's the next question? Are you taking turns, or who's going to ask the next question?
Yes, she can go.
Charmaine.
Yes. So my next question is speaking about criminal records now, priors and everything. So that is actually one of my next questions. If someone has got a criminal record, say for example, for theft and not paying child support, how would you say that affect their refugee application? And then to add on to that question is, would you say there's like more serious crimes that have a bigger impact towards your application being? Some people say, it's nothing major, but how would you say it actually impacts your application?
Okay, Charmaine, your video voice kept getting clipped, but I believe the question was the following. If I get it correct, give me a thumbs up. Okay, I believe what you're saying is a question about criminal convictions. What's a serious conviction? What about a minor conviction? Not paying taxes or not paying child support or getting a fine or something like that. Vice is more serious. What constitutes more serious? Is that was the question? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I said thumbs up. She said yes. Okay, see, people don't listen to me. Okay, all right. So, all right. Now, I'm good. I don't have a definitive answer from the U.S. government because they don't share that. What I will share with you is what I've shared from the very beginning as someone experienced this. I am a federal law enforcement official, retired now, counterintelligence agent, badge and credentialed. I interrogated people. I investigated crimes. I investigate espionage. I've also dealt with security clearances. The people with the most rigorous background checks in America, other than maybe a nominee for a political office that the political opposition wants to torpedo and not let them get in, the people with the deepest background checks are people with the security clearance, and particularly people who have the level clearance that I held and still hold, by the way. That I've had to do polygraphs. I've they have all kinds of things, and they'll go back everywhere. So we are the people most heavily scrutinized, and we still screw up and have spies in our midst. But anyway, so we're the most heavily scrutinized. The second most heavily scrutinized group, other than those political appointees that other party wants to submarine, are refugee applicants, refugee aspirants. Your background, as Chanell can attest, because they knew about her potential. She doesn't even doing it. She's talking about doing it, and they knew about that. And they took the time to figure that out. That takes time, folks. And people are like, I haven't got her in 2 months. I haven't heard from anybody. You realize people are checking your background. People are looking into it. They have to be prepared. They can't just, all right, we got a statement of interest. Let's call in Chanell tomorrow. No, it doesn't work like that. It takes time. All right. So if you've been convicted of a crime in South Africa, say, for instance, failure to pay child support, or you were caught shoplifting, when we give security clearances, the adjudicator, I use that term already, an adjudicator adjudicates your case. And same for security clearance, the same for a refugee aspirant. Your case will be adjudicated. an adjudicator, normally, I can't speak for USCIS how they do it, but I know how the process works in the government. And I know how it works in the military. And I'm giving you my experience and what my expectation would be. Normally, an adjudicator takes a whole person concept. Okay. Let me give you an example. I've got a 26-year-old who was arrested at 15 and convicted of shoplifting from a supermarket. Okay. Maybe they went in Checkers and stole something, got caught, got fingered, and they got busted, and they went to juvenile hall for a couple months, something like that. That person now is a volunteer in their church. That person has never been arrested for anything else since then. That person worked briefly but can't work now because of racial persecution. And we contacted the people that they work for. They were a reliable employee, never accused of any theft. We never had any suspicion the person even had a criminal record or something like that. All right, a whole person concept. And there's much more than just that. I would look at that as adjudicator and say that was a youthful indiscretion. It's not a representation of the character of this person. Therefore, we can consider moving this case forward for refugee status. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now let me go on to something more serious. You've been convicted of treason in South Africa. Well, for me, that's going to put a red flag up because, number one, I've got legitimate questions about the legitimacy of the South African government. It doesn't mean there have been people committed treason. Some of the Boer-Mag were committing treason against the current government. That's a fact. But there were more government agents in the Boer-Mag than there were Boer-Mag members. But that's a whole other story. Anyway, but it is an automatic denial. I would look at this and look into the case. We'd look and see if, in fact, you were railroaded. I have talked to at least 3 people who claim to me, they approached me during my meet and greets in South Africa last year, or earlier this year, excuse me. They approached me and said I was convicted of treason. And 3 different meet and greets came up to me. I was shocked. I won, but 3, I was convicted of treason. This is what happened. I wasn't involved with this other group, and they accused me of this, and the options were this. I lose my property, my farm, going bankrupt, or I accept this and go to jail for 18 months. And I took the 18 months, So that doesn't mean that you're going to be, it's going to be, the chances are you may have a lot of scrutiny and you may not get it, but no harm, no foul. If nothing ventured, nothing gained. If you don't try, you won't get it. Now, if you're a convicted rapist, if you're a convicted murderer, if you're a pedo, you probably shouldn't bother applying. Okay? Those are serious crimes, and it is pretty rare. Now, rapist is different. Sometimes people are accused of rape that they didn't commit, and sometimes innocent people are convicted of rape they never committed. That's a true statement. So if that's the case for you, and you have a strong case to argue against it, or you have an attorney that has, evidence, then I would say apply. Okay? I mean, or not apply, but put the statement of interest in. So serious crimes, you're probably going to be denied. If you were in the military and you were involved in humanitarian or human rights abuses or murders or extrajudicial killings in the state of the police, you are not coming to America. We can't have murderers and pedos and rapists in our midst. We have enough of our own, unfortunately. We don't need to import them. That's why all these illegal aliens, we have people like Dogzilla who come in and go, oh, but they're just honest people. Bullshit. They're criminals. They violate our sovereignty. They dropped their passports and identification cards at the river when they crossed over illegally in this country, slipped in, they steal social security numbers, they drive down wages. They're not legitimate people. They're criminals. And many of them actually are criminals. We can't let people like that in our country. Anyway, so I hope that answers that question.
Perfect.
Yes. And follow up on it. So you say like you put in whole. So how would it look in your opinion, once again, if this person has more than one criminal, like say over the past few years, they've got 2 or 3 different criminal cases, would you say it lessens their chances?
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, and I think you've sort of answered it. If people were listening to my first response, I talked about someone shoplifting at 15, now they're 26. If someone is 35 years old, they've got 3 criminal convictions the last 18 months, regardless of what the convictions are for, that shows a pattern of behavior. That shows if it's legitimate, an untrustworthy person, a person that we don't want to put in the midst. I mean, we have an obligation. See, what people fail to understand, all these people crying and whining, and yes, some of you are crying and whining, admit it, be honest with yourself, about stop it. Our government has a responsibility to bring people in this country who are not a threat to Americans. And if we bring a known rapist or a murderer or a pedo into this country, or someone that has a habit of simply breaking the law, they stole this, they trespassed here, they got an assault case here, we don't need that. I mean, the last thing we need is we need a drunken boor at a honky-tonk beating up on women. We don't need that, okay? So if you've had several of these, if you've had more than one in recent history, it could very well prevent you from coming. That's a true statement. Again, it's a whole person concept. We're looking at the whole person. What I did at 16 doesn't reflect who I am at 59. That's a true statement. I mean, at 16, normally we're pretty naive. Now, I wasn't naive because I had a horrible childhood and I was unfortunately exposed to the behavior of adults. But my point is that still, I was young. My brain was still forming. My judgment wasn't what it is later on in life. If you're 35 doing the same things that a 16-year-old does, well, that's problematic. So the answer there, Charmaine, is that yes, it could very well be a reason you don't go. If you've been charged and convicted of spousal abuse or wife beating or husband beating, yes, that happens. Gender-based violence goes both ways. If you've been convicted of that, then that's not going to be favorable. We don't need to bring a family over that's got problems. Families have problems because they're suffering from racial persecution unjustly. All right, so she got a follow-up. She got 2 in there, Chanell. So it's your turn.
Do I also get 2? No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so this is a question that poses a lot of headaches in many groups. So when the organizations like CWS conduct interviews and the time comes for them to arrange flights and ask for, let's, for example, say, can you fly in 2 to 4 weeks? Or you have someone who requests if they can leave at the end of November. Can you confirm that this is not a fixed timeline? It is just so that they have estimates and can help them with planning, because many people seem to take these dates as, literal dates when they are going to leave, and it's causing a lot of anxiety and stress.
All right, that's a fantastic question. And without insulting Afrikaners, I begin to worry about the intelligence quotient of many people. When you've been asked if you can be prepared to leave in 2 to 4 weeks or be prepared in 2 to 4 weeks, that is not a firm date, especially now with the government shutdown. We can't fly anybody out right now. So I've had people who have gone for the interview, their first interview, sold their belongings, quit their jobs, lived in a hotel in Pretoria, did the interview, and then a month later, oh, we're bankrupt. We have nothing. This isn't fair. They're not treating us fair. Who told you to sell your property? Who told you to leave your home? Who told you to quit your job? You were asked to come for an interview on a statement of interest. You haven't even applied for a program officially until you've been interviewed, until you fill out paperwork. That's insane. And I'm not trying to abuse it. People did it, but it's been more than one time. Where do people get this notion? No one led you to believe that. No one told you that. Certainly not me. Never told anyone that. Now, the people who were supposed to fly from the 26th of September go from that date onwards, from then until about the 10th of October, I think there were flights booked. They were all canceled. Those people are a special case. It's understandable that they relocated. They had to relocate. They had to close out their stuff because they were given a ticket. This is the date you're flying. Once you've got a provisional letter saying that you're approved, it's provisional. And people are like, why is it provisional? Because we might find something and then you're kicked out, okay? When I recruited soldiers to join the New Armed Forces of Liberia, they were enlisting for a 12-month provisional period, which meant they could be dismissed for anything. Same thing here. It's provisional, which means that you are conditionally approved to come to America. If we find out something that can't change the conditions that you hid or we didn't know about or makes you ineligible, well, then you can't come. That's why it's provisional. So when you receive a provisional letter, then you know you've been accepted as a refugee and you will be coming to America. But to my knowledge, that letter never gives you the date. You get the date when they book a ticket for you. Once you have a ticket booked, then you can take action. Then you can do things. In the meantime, I've talked about decluttering. People, if I go in my basement, my goodness, I need to have a yard sale. Just empty the basement in the front yard and don't even sell it. Just give it away. I got so much junk down there after being here for a couple of years. And we're getting a good view of Charmaine's finger. It's lovely. So she's trying to keep her phone from locking up the timer. Anyway, so if you've got a ticket, then you can take action. If you've got a provisional letter, then you can jump for joy and be excited. But until you have that, being told, can you be prepared or be prepared to leave in 2 to 4 weeks is no guarantee of anything. It's not a promise. And if you take it as a promise, I don't mean to insult you, but you're not paying attention or you're not very bright. Does that answer the question?
Thank you. It does, yes. But I do have another question.
All right, you're going to follow up.
So another thing causing a lot of havoc and stress amongst the Afrikaners is the speculation that that Network 24 and Marula and all of those news outlets are spreading about the 7,000 to 7,500 refugees that are going to be let into the US. Donald Trump hasn't signed off anything yet. And once again, if you have not said anything about it yet, to me, it's not verified. I've told the people, don't believe because I've been getting, and I don't mind the members sending me DMs and asking me things, but it's the way they ask. It's like they believe all of this. So can you just tell us, have you heard anything from the US side that we could possibly, just steer the members in the right direction with regards to the cap on the refugees?
Okay, let me, it's a couple of questions, and I'll answer both of them. Before I do that, Buttery Gold is here, and Buttery Gold says, no, I've been a member for 2 years, but I'm not online all the time. Well, Buttery Gold, you're not a member, you're a subscriber, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you for being a subscriber. Members pay. And the pay, really, all they're getting for that is they're helping support the channel, and they help cover some of my costs, which I'm very grateful for. Plus, you do get something. You get a longevity thing. Like Mad Max has got a castle right there because he's been a member for a long time. Liz Grunewald has got the Statue of Liberty, and somebody just became a member in the last 30 days. That's Salvatore Leone, who's got a RDP house. The RDP house is for new members.
I think I need to become a member.
So there's no need to become members, but I do appreciate it. It does generate some revenue, and there's 3 levels of it. But that's what a member is. You're just a subscriber, and that's fine. We're happy. We got 113,000 subscribers, and we'd like to have 1.3 million. So tell your friends and neighbors. Don't tell your enemies because they're a pain in the ass when they come on here. Okay, back to your question. What was your question now? I'm going to think about this for a second. What was it?
The refugee cap.
Oh, the cap. Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, so senior moments creep in. Okay, so first off, every year the executive branch is obliged under the Immigration Nationality Act of 1980 to submit a report to Congress. It's to inform Congress. And that's so Congress can make plans on how to fund things. But they submit it at the end of the fiscal year, which is comical because the budget in a real world would have already been approved before the fiscal year starts. So in my view, the intent is not for Congress to use as a basis to approve a budget because it would have, in a normal government, already been approved. Our budget would have been approved back in February, March for this coming year in October, or April, May, June. But this report only comes out in August, September, statutory requirement. That report lays out how many refugees came for the previous year, where they came from, how many asylum seekers were approved for asylum, how many applied, which countries they applied from. And it also gives executive summary and details and funding levels, how much was spent, the NGOs that we hire in the states to do it, and any challenges the program may have, So it's being described as a cap and a presidential determination. I don't know that that's legally what it is. It's a report. That's what the law says. So I will stand a correction for this, but my understanding of the report, and I've read the reports, they don't read like they say this is our projection. We're going to take 125,000 refugees this fiscal year, and 30,000 will come from Eritrea. Or 15,000 will come from the DRC conflict, which could include people from Uganda, DRC, Rwanda, yada, yada, yada. We're going to take X number of people from Somalia or from the Rohingya. We name a group specifically being persecuted, or homosexuals in the Middle East being persecuted. So they come from any of these countries, they're being persecuted. They lay that out. That is the objective. People keep calling it the cap. I say, and I don't stand a correction here because I know I'm right about this, that it's not a cap in the sense that it's habitually ignored, okay? We have a cap of 125,000, but we didn't take 125,000 last year. We could this past fiscal year, which just ended, because Trump shut the program down in January. So it only went from October, November, December. So we obviously didn't take 125,000. We only took about 400 South Africans in. And I don't know who we took in from Eritrea or Somalia or Myanmar or China before that, but it sure as hell wasn't 125,000 in just 3 months. So let's say it was about 30,000. So that means this year's cap was 125,000. We took in 31,000 people. So it's habitually violated down, and it's also violated up. When Joe Biden foolishly destroyed our mission in Afghanistan, which had been arguably successful to a degree after trillions of dollars was spent there, he just walked out. He wanted a big, on September 11th, they're leaving because that was the date of the Trade Center attacks. So he says September 11th, he announces it, and then we leave and we run away. And as a consequence, we took in 162,000 Afghan refugees in a matter of just weeks. Well, the whole year was 162,000, but in 3 weeks, it took in like 160,000. All these people getting on C-17s and being flown to America, not even vetted. The entire process broken. So they were considered refugees. They were given humanitarian resettlement refugees. So, people get fixated on us. But what I will tell you is that in August, the New York Times ran this first story saying that the cap was going to be 45,000 and 40,000 we reserve for Afrikaners. Well, again, the South Africa program right now, unless it's changed, is for racial minorities. And yes, the majority of people coming over are white, but the majority aren't even Afrikaners. It's about even English-speaking South Africans and white Afrikaners. And then there are a few coloreds and Indians who've also come over. that don't consider themselves Afrikaners, but are South Africans who are racial minorities. So that story to me was either disingenuous or it's meant to frighten people. Now, they did it based on some inside information from people who leaked information in August. So they said 45,000 and 40,000 for Afrikaners, which I dispute. Now another story's come out from the New York Times, and the Washington Post has glommed onto it as well, saying that the cap will be 7,500 and that 7,000 will be reserved for white Afrikaners. And then Ambassador Designate Bozell just testified saying that he will accelerate the effort to bring Afrikaners over here. So there are clear indications that the priority will be white Afrikaners. But the execution has been primarily white South Africans with a few Indians and coloreds. So that's the truth of the matter. That's the context. I don't know what's going to come out of it. I suspect that the cap will be significantly lower. Maybe it's 40,000, maybe it's 10,000. I don't know. But President Trump has signed nothing, and it's not going to get signed until after the budget, at least a continuing resolution or whatever is put in place. So that's where we currently sit at. Now, I will tell South Africans the following. On February 6th, you had no hope of getting out of South Africa. Because if you did, you already lived in England, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Germany, China, Hong Kong, U.S. You already lived somewhere else. You already got out. Either you had the resource you did or you had 2 passports. You got out a long time ago. There are millions of South Africans living abroad who can't live in South Africa, white, Indian, and colored, because of racial persecution. It's unsafe. They can't get work, and they go abroad to Dubai. They go to London, wherever. So if you could get out, the vast majority of people have gotten out. That said, 82 people per day on average find a way to get out anyway without the refugee program, more than the refugees coming over here. So South Africa is being bled white, no pun intended, being bled white by the blood being drained out of it, of its human capital leaving without President Trump's program. So as far as President Trump's program, I think a number of people saw it, oh, look, free immigration. If that's your objective, you're in the wrong place. If that's your objective, but you're still suffering racial persecution, you want to put interest in, that's okay. But this isn't an immigration program. And I get some guy who wrote to me, said, well, I'm a researcher. I have all these books and everything. How will the refugee program help me get into America? Well, the answer is it won't. You're a refugee. We're not paying for you to ship your research and your books over here. You want to bring them? You got to pay for that. Well, I've got these pets, and then how do they get them? They don't get pets over. It's not a pet rescue program. That's for National Geographic or Wildlife Safari. That's not for the refugee program. Sorry, I hurt your feelings, but we don't rescue pets. Pets are not Homo sapiens. The idea is to protect Homo sapiens. It's a kindness that we do, and other countries do. So the bottom line there is that anyway, I think I've answered it. Okay, that was your follow-up question? Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay, so now it's Charmaine's turn again. I was about to go down a rabbit hole, so I stopped myself.
Thank you, Kunal. That really did help because people were freaking out about it. So yeah, that definitely helped. My question is, one of the members reached out and they as a family applied for the refugee program and they got their first contact. She didn't clarify what her first contact was or so on. Not to once confirm she has they met obviously husband up. She has a job opportunity.
Okay.
Sorry.
Charmaine,
she has a job opportunity.
Sorry, Charmaine, you're breaking up. Can I read because I have your questions as well.
Okay. Give me one more. Please.
We cannot hear you, Colonel.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Charmaine. Yeah, okay. Charmaine, I want you to leave the chat if you can hear me. Leave the stream, leave the Zoom, and then re-enter because the connection might just be bad on your end. So leave entirely, come back in. I'll let you back in, and hopefully it'll improve. But we couldn't understand even every third word that time. So Chanell is going to ask your question because she has some. But before we do that, somebody at Star Chaser is asking about checks. Guys, okay, some of you must be new. And Chanell knows. For the 10 billionth time, we do not rely on South African checks. That doesn't mean we don't do checks through South African agencies. It just means that they get adjudicated and looked at with a very specific lens, because people have objectives. You do not need a police clearance. I don't know where people got that nonsense from. Well, what are you going to the police for? What, so the SAPs can tell us that it's okay for you to come? I mean, have you seen the Mkwanazi testimony? Have you seen the Mshlanga trial? What's going on? Adjudication? If you've seen that, then she's also behind. She's getting information about 5 seconds behind us, so she just realized to log off now. So basically, without saying we don't trust SAPs, we don't trust SAPs. Okay? So why would we take a police clearance from an organization that's widely known as corrupt? We wouldn't do that. That doesn't mean we don't go to their records and ask for criminal convictions and arrest. We do. So the background checks that are done on you are not done by a South African detective agency. They're not done. They're done by the Americans. Trust me. We have the most extensive, other than the Chinese spies, most extensive and deepest investigative program in the world. We're checking you, not them. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Chanell. You can ask Charmaine's question.
Yes, I think it was this question. If a family member has already applied for refugee status, but another receives a job opportunity in the US, could accepting that job offer in any way affect the pending refugee application or overall eligibility for resettlement?
Okay, sorry. I'm trying to get her back in there. I think she's a little confused. You're going to have to ask that question again. Let me see. Okay, do this for me real quick because I can't. She probably can't hear us, and because she's in the waiting room now, and I can't bring her back in. So send her a WhatsApp after you ask the question again, and tell her to leave the chat, leave the Zoom, and then come back. And she didn't leave; she just went in the waiting room. Okay. All right. So ask me the question again, folks. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to.
No worries. Okay. So, if a family member has already applied for refugee status, but another receives a job opportunity in the US. Could accepting that job offer in any way affect the pending refugee application or overall eligibility for resettlement?
Okay, let's talk about this. If a family member has an offer of a job, won't affect anything other than you could update them when they talk to you and say, hey, have you already signed us a location? Because we got a job offer, one of our family members in Michigan. Can we go there? It could affect it that way, but that seems highly unlikely because you don't really have regular contact with them. They're working on your case behind the scenes. If you get a job opportunity, it doesn't affect anything. You get a job offer in China, it's not going to affect anything. If, however, you go to America, you're no longer going to be considered a refugee. You need to get to America as a refugee first and enter as a refugee. If you come on an H-2A visa, then you can't be a refugee. But it won't necessarily affect the other applicants. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
Okay.
So I told her to leave Zoom.
She did.
Totally, and then come back.
Okay, she
perfect.
did. So when she pops
do
back,
I get 2 chances now?
Oh, you get another bite at the apple. It's your turn.
Okay, so once a person has entered the US as a refugee, we've all been told, and to me it's common sense, you cannot leave the US until you have become a US citizen. So you cannot come back to South Africa, the place that you fear persecution. Is that correct?
Mostly correct. Okay. So we had this Canadian immigration consultant who makes money by getting people to go to Canada, go on Newsroom Africa. And of course, I think that's one of the times Newsroom Africa lied about something I said, but maybe it was one after that. But he said, being a refugee is a black mark in your passport. You can't go anywhere. You're trapped in the place you go. Those are complete, utter balderdash lies. So here's the situation and a common sense approach. If you are fleeing a country because of persecution, okay? Not okay, but I mean, you get my point. 600 people here now, 400 likes. Please hit that like button, folks. We're getting Charmaine back in. If you flee a place like Somalia because of conflict, why in the world would you go back to that place if your life was in jeopardy? So from a common sense perspective, it should seem self-evident to people that you can't go back. And that's the problem. People don't look at this. They don't pay attention to refugee, or they see a free immigration program where they don't have to spend $15,000. All right, you can just leave it in portrait. That's fine, as long as we got you. Let's leave it like that, Charmaine. All right, but just set it down so it's standing. So from a common sense standpoint, I don't understand how anybody gets this wrong. It should be obvious. However, you are fleeing in an in-country status, which is unusual. Not unprecedented, but unusual. We've done it for Cuba. We've done it for Bosnia and Herzegovina. We've done it for a handful of other countries. A in-country refugee program is different. This means you're coming from a country that hasn't collapsed. You're just being persecuted. Like if you're a gay man in Syria. Syria, well, that's not the best, but pick an Arab country. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, you're gay, and you ask for refugee status because you could be killed there. They drop you off a roof. Okay, but it's still safe to go to Saudi Arabia. I mean, for other people. So in an in-country situation like this, there can be exceptions made. But the more South Africans come over here, the harder it's going to be to get an exception because they have to process these. So if you're a South African and your elderly mother is near death and you've come over as a refugee, You can ask the State Department. For some reason, I got an echo when she came back on. You don't have anything else turned on, hopefully. But you can ask for an exception in that case. You have to apply to the State Department, the USCIS, and say, my mother's ill. I need to go back to South Africa. Can I go back to South Africa? And they can approve it. And they do approve it on occasion. But generally speaking, you can't go there. Now, if you want to go to Canada or Mexico, you also have to ask for approval. Because as a refugee, you are a ward of the U.S. Now, as far as never being able to leave the country while you're a refugee, once you get a permanent residency, you have permanent residency in the U.S., you can re-enter the U.S. at any time. So I don't know the exact answer on that, but I believe at that stage, because you're no longer receiving refugee assistance, you have permanent residency. I mean, technically, you're no longer really a refugee, I believe, under the law, and I'm not going to state that categorically. So you should be able to go, but they'll answer that question for you at USCIS. They can answer that question. You should be able to go to Canada or UK. Let's say you come here as a refugee. You get permanent residency, and a year and a half later, you get offered a professorship at Oxford. You should, in theory, be able to go over there as long as England, the UK lets you in. But yes, generally speaking, no, you can't go back to South Africa. I mean, that's just asinine. I mean, that's not directed at you, obviously, Chanell. That's an asinine. I mean, why would people think you go back to South Africa? And that's the other thing. The guy who was asking me about, who's a researcher, and he wants his books, he's like, well, I run a tour company, and so I'll have to come back 4 times a year. Dude, you're talking about immigration. You want to immigrate? Get a lawyer. Pay the $30,000. Stay here for years until you get approved. Yeah. Now, as far as being a U.S. citizen, once you have a U.S. passport, you can go where the hell you want. Doesn't matter. You're an American. That's the best passport. Well, some people say it's not anymore. Well, maybe Finland's got the best passport. Whatever the case is, once you have a blue passport as American, then you're an American citizen and you have our protections. So if you go to South Africa and get in trouble, you can go to the consulate and say, hey, I'm being persecuted here. But as a refugee, you can't generally go back to the country you're being persecuted in for obvious reasons. You're being persecuted. Otherwise, you've defrauded us. You weren't really being persecuted. You just slipped in the system and lied. Okay? So, all right. And you can lose your refugee status if you do things. You do bad things or you break the terms, you can lose your refugee status. It's rare, but refugees have had their status revoked. Mostly it's when they've defrauded the government and lied about something. That's why I tell you to be honest. Okay, Charmaine's back. All right, let's see if her sound's any better. Go ahead, Charmaine.
Okay, I think it's better now.
Oh, much better.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Chanell, for asking my question. I heard it in the background, but yeah. Okay, so my next question is, there's a family a family, quite a big family. They all linked together. So it was mother and father and then their adult kids. So the adult kids have gone over, they've all went through the process at the same time, interviews same time, medical same time, and then the kids got their flight tickets and they are already resettled. They are actually doing great. But the mother and father they didn't get their approval letters or flight tickets or anything yet. And when they click on the applications, it says pending USCIS administration. So do you have any idea like what could be the holdup or what they could expect, or just any idea for them?
Well, that's a pretty broad question without knowing the details of the case. Those are very very much generalities. But I mean, if I would use supposition, I don't know. Was the couple, the parents? It sounds like they're older. Were they involved in the National Party at some point? Was he in politics? Was he in the political party? Was he in the police service? Was he in the military? Was he involved in a company or organization that was credibly accused of doing something wrong at some point? That could very well be part of it. If none of that's it, it may simply just be a case of the backlog. See, this is the problem. I'm getting conflicting reports from people saying that, you know, their whole family, their adult children came over. Well, the way it's supposed to work is the following. This is the way it's supposed to work. If you have a spouse, not a partner, this isn't the UK. Oh, this is my partner in Australia. These people never get married, and all their children are bastards. But anyway, so if you have a spouse and you have minor children under the age of 18, then that's your nuclear family. That's who you put a statement of interest in, or in the case, you know, if you're in a refugee camp in Kenya, that's who you put an application in for. Not Tani, Mariah, not Paul. They're not your family. Yes, I know they're blood relations, but not your family. And your parents aren't your family. You're an adult. You know, those people in their 60s, they may be your parents, but they're not your family unless they're under your care. You have an incapacitated because of Alzheimer's or dementia or physically incapable, and they're a ward of you. And in America, we have legal status for that. I mean, some people are diminished mental capacity, so they live with their adult children, and they're their caregivers. They file for them on their taxes, claim as independent because they provide their life support. But you have to have a legal determination on it. I don't know how that works in South Africa. Does a court award you that? I'm not going to get into that. But that would be a normal situation. However, I've had cases of people who have adult children. Now, the exception to that is if your adult children are attending university or vocational school at 19, 20, up to 21, they're still considered a member of your nuclear family or a child because they're not out on their own, if that makes sense. That's how things are normally done, legally. Okay, there have been some strange exceptions here in my view, and we've had adults who are like 21 or 22 who've applied with their parents in the 50s, and they all came over together. Now, I'm not sure why that happened or how that happened, and I'm not saying anything good or bad about it. I'm just stating that's what I've talked to some of these people, so I know that they must be telling me the truth. So, in this case, this is probably a standard application. That large family maybe came with the kids and the minor kids and the adult parents, and they're adults. Maybe they put them in a statement of interest and put them in the same one, Southern family, but they're not. And so when it got to adjudication, whoever the adjudicator was or whoever reviewed the case said, no, that's a separate family legally. We're going to look at them later. And they're probably just in the queue somewhere. They're probably just in the queue. There are a lot. I mean, the Amerikaners are currently processing, to my knowledge, at least 2,000 statements of interest and screening 2,000 cases. There's only a couple people doing that. That's a lot of work. They work 7 days a week. They bust their ass. The RSC guys, everyone will tell you that's seen the RSC guys or talked to the RSC guys and also UCS. It says these guys are busting their tail too. Working like they're like the orthopedic office just called me on a Sunday to confirm my appointment. That's the kind of work ethic we have in America and we expect from people. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's that way. I'm just saying, as an organization, that's what they're expecting. So it's just a lot of applications. You can imagine that one case, I don't know, just a case with no complications. 2 adults married, no kids, no criminal convictions, 22, 23 years old, and they've got a legitimate case. That case alone probably takes a couple hundred manpower just to screen, review, consider, adjudicate one case. Now multiply that by 100,000 plus. And there's also people get frustrated because, well, I got contacted a month ago. They said they'd get right back with me. Well, that's because the person that screened you from RC was told, because they take what they did, they pass it on to another person, either another person RC or to the U.S. person who has to review it. And things get stacked up. I mean, people get sick. People get COVID. You know, that's still a thing. They're gone for a week, and then everything just piles up for the week. And they come back, and it takes them a month to get caught up to where they're caught up again. So I understand that people get frustrated. But again, back to my point, on February 6th, you had nothing. Nobody was offering you anything. And this, we didn't say, hey, South Africans, President Trump says you can come to America. All you got to do is give us $1 million. We're not doing that. It's free. So these people that are freaking out, well, I have no option. Well, you had no option on February 6th. So don't get angry at the U.S. government. Don't get angry at Trump. You've been offered a golden ticket. And because it's not on your timeline, you're angry. You need to check yourself in the mirror if that's your attitude. Because you're not entitled to anything. This isn't an obligation. It's not an entitlement. It's a golden gift. And the way they handle it is the way they handle it. And they're handling it above board. Just because you don't see that doesn't mean that's the case. So if that hurts people's feelings and I lose viewers, so be it. I really don't care at this point. After 8 months of telling people the truth and being the only person who's been prescient like Senior von Rensburg and told people before things happen. By the way, watch the U.S. Embassy website, the only official place to get information on this. Not the Washington Times, not the Washington Post, not Chris Wyatt, not Professor G, not anyone else. That's the official statement. But you watch their site. On most of the things I've talked to people about and answered questions, predicted what it's likely going to be, their website changed later on to reflect what I said. Now, you can take that any way you want. That doesn't mean I'm directing the U.S. government. Just, I think the point I'm making is that the U.S. government realized that they weren't being forthcoming enough and would finally share the information that was necessary to reassure people about the program after I told people what it was supposed to be, and I turned out to be correct almost every time. So, again, the people who, I've seen the very dark side of Afrikaners in this process. I really have. My disappointment level with some South Africans is beyond the pale now. I mean, entitlement, demands, outrage, utter nonsense. The vast majority of people, of course, as usual, wonderful people, fantastic people. But I mean, it's the outliers, and it isn't one or two, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies, it isn't one or two. It's hundreds of people I hear this from, and it's not a good look. And what I would tell people like that is that we don't need crybabies in our country. Ooh, that's going to piss some people off. I just said that. Okay. But after 8 months, look, but you don't know. Oh, I do know. I've been there. I've worn that jersey. I've traveled that mile. I do know. And I lived in far worse places in Africa than people in South Africa. I do understand. I do empathize. And I've been in combat multiple times. And I grew up in abject poverty. So don't tell me I don't know, I don't understand, I don't have empathy, because I've got more empathy than virtually anybody out there. And I busted my tail. We are providing food to people who have no money, who are on those tickets that were canceled. We're providing accommodation for several families that were on there through volunteers in South Africa, reached out through my network. So I don't see anyone else offering food, accommodation, or answers to people at this level. So you don't like that, neener. Anyway, next question, ladies. That was fun. I enjoyed that.
No, it's fun. Just to go back onto the question about, traveling back and forth to your country of persecution should someone pass away or whatever. This question's more focused on, let's say you get to the US as a refugee, you find a job, or maybe you work remotely, but you still need to travel, internationally. I know you get advanced parole. You need to apply for advanced parole. Will that be allowed for a refugee before they get permanent residency, or?
Well, you asked a question that I may not be able to answer, because advanced parole is not part of the refugee program. To my knowledge, that's for asylum seekers or humanitarian resettlement. So I'm not sure that applies here. Again, I'm not trying to speak as an authoritative source. Again, we go back to the point that if you get a job, say you get a job with Union Bank of Switzerland, which is based in New York, in Manhattan, which, by the way, all but offer me a job, and they pay a lot, but I'm not going to live in New York City, trust me. Anyway, Union Bank of Switzerland, Swiss banking corporation with branches all over Europe and around the world, but they have an office in New York. If you get hired by them and they need you to travel to Portugal for a conference, you will have to get approval from the U.S. government while you're in the refugee status. But it won't preclude you from getting that job unless they don't want to hire you because of that. But as a refugee in the United States and contiguous United States and its outlying territories and outlying two states, Alaska and Hawaii, you are entitled to the same protections of the Constitution as every American citizen and permanent green card holder as a refugee, which for some refugees who've been here as H-2A visa holders in the past or came to America and lived here on their own as an immigrant and then went back to South Africa and they have a social security number because they needed it. If you arrive in America, the day you arrive, you have a social security number, you can go get a job. Almost nobody else can do that in America. You can't work legally without social security and without a work authorization. Refugees are granted work authorization almost instantaneously the moment they arrive. And as we've seen from Thea van Staden, she got herself a pretty good job, earning, if not six figures, close to six figures, within 2 weeks of starting looking for work. And Earl runs a car wash, although he's taken a leave of absence because of Jay's cancer. Also out in Twin Falls, both Kara and her husband both have got jobs. She works for Chobani, got a job right away. I mean, she's got a Bucky. I wish I could have that Bucky because, all she did was show her letter of employment. And the people that sold the car to her at the car dealership know that that's guaranteed employment. That company takes care of people. And so, she didn't even have to have a credit history. And she got a loan, a good loan, and got herself a brand new Bucky. And, man, I'm going to go to Idaho and steal that damn thing. It's lovely. I love it, man. It's awesome. And her husband's working, too. Willem has got a job. And, in fact, his employer gave him a company car to use. So, I mean, just an example for them and their daughter, they bought a beater, a used, a previously owned automobile. They bought that through the Refugee Assistance Center there, who they go out and they have people that find inexpensive cars that are operational. They buy them and they put them there so they can sell them, not to make money. They sell them at cost to refugees so they have a car to get around. And so they bought that when they first got there. It's a little beater car. You should see it. The paint's all peeled off of it. It's not rusted, but it's pretty. But their adult daughter, who's 19, who's attending university, she has the car now. And so he's got a company car and she's got a Bucky. And so, I mean, how did I get down that path? I wound up going the wrong way. But anyway, maybe I didn't answer the question. Did I answer the question?
You did, Colonel.
Okay.
You did,
right.
yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so there you go.
Charmaine, you can go.
Okay. So previously in this week, people were talking about like they stopping the food programs and stuff like that, and you actually made a video about that, and in one of your videos you spoke about it, and you said we're going to America to leave you to starve. So that is actually getting back to it now, is some of the mothers are like wondering, like people with babies, have any idea what assistance they could expect? Like some of them are planning ahead in advance, taking cash with, but not everyone is in that position. So they are like trying to plan ahead about what about the babies if they know about WIC, but will refugees be able to apply for WIC?
Okay, so Charmaine, a lot of your question was broken up. I'm going to fall back on Chanell in just a moment here because she's got your question written down, but I believe I missed the first part entirely. Something about mothers being able to work, something like that. But before, Chanell, find that question, before you read it to me and back what she asked, I want to go over here. There was a question or a comment over here about Art Queen Liza said it took 8 years for naturalization to become an American. Refugees wait less time. That's true. Refugees are eligible to apply for U.S. citizenship after 5 years. That's advanced. Most people can't apply till 7 years, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, Chanell, could you read back to me what I missed on her question?
Okay, I think it was this question. Many mothers with infants are concerned about access to essentials such as diapers and baby formula once they arrive. Some have heard about assistance programs like WIC in the US. Would refugees be eligible to apply for such programs? And if not, what alternatives or resources would you suggest for families with young children?
Okay, I was trying to answer a question and do that same time, so my apologies, but I think it was a question about women, infants, and children. Will they be able to get that assistance? Okay, so that's an interesting question, but I'm also curious about why people whose life is in jeopardy and they're in fear of being murdered are worried about food stamps and free freebies. Okay, and the way I've always presented this is: show me the refugees in America who are starving. Show me the refugees in America who've come here who are not going anywhere. All right, it isn't the case that I'm aware of. Maybe there's a case here or there, but I'm not aware of any. We don't have exposés in the Washington Times or the Washington Post or the New York Times or the Chicago Sun Times, LA Times going, look at these starving refugee families in Utah. They've been neglected. They've been here for a year and they're starving. That doesn't happen. I've never seen a story like that. I'm not saying it never happens, but so first off, as far as freebies, and I'm not saying that's someone's focus, but if that's what you're concerned about, then your concern's in the wrong place. Okay, now, having said that, the big, beautiful bill changed some things. President Trump's new law that was signed on the 4th of July eliminates refugees from the category, most refugees from the category of people eligible for a supplemental nutritional assistance, or as I prefer to call it, what it should be called, food stamps. Food stamps are for people. It's meant to help people short term who've fallen on hard times because they've lost work or had an injury or had medical bills, and it's supposed to help them. But we have people in America that spend their entire childhoods on food stamps because they have worthless, useless parents. And then they become adults and they expect food stamps and expect us to pay for it, those who contribute to society. So for the South African refugees, up until October 1st, people were getting food stamps. And some of those already getting them will still be able to receive them. SNAP. But going forward, that won't be the case. As far as women, infants, children, that's a broader program. I don't know the status of that, but many of these freebies that were given out are now been restricted to American citizens and permanent green card holders exclusively. The reason wasn't to hurt refugees. The reason was to stop criminal alien invaders who violated our sovereignty, invaded this country, and are getting freebies illegitimately. We, the taxpayer, are paying for people from Venezuela, from Kazakhstan, from Congo who slipped in this country and have stolen identities and are working and getting handouts. And that's what the law was meant to do. Unfortunately, either intentionally, I don't think it was intentionally, I think it was an oversight, they didn't pay attention that this would affect refugees and that the number of refugees getting it isn't that large. But here's the bottom line. When Thea arrived in North Carolina at her location, people know she's North Carolina, it's not a state secret. When she arrived there, she was taken to her permanent residence, an apartment, and the refrigerator was overflowing with food. The cupboards were full. She settled in. She's a single person there by herself. 2 days later, they brought groceries to her and filled up her cupboards again, and overfilled them. And then later that week, they brought groceries. She's like, oh, guys, stop. It's just me. I can't eat all this. Okay. By the same token, a family in Austin, Texas from South Africa arrived there. Their refugee assistance agent, who apparently was LGBTQ community member, which shouldn't have any impact, but apparently that person got pissy because they're part of that political crowd that thinks that, this is unfair that white South Africans could come over. So dropped them in a hotel for the weekend, gave them $25 and said, I'll see you next week, essentially. But gave them a list of places to call. I missed a call from the hotel. I didn't know if they had a phone. So they called these places that were approved for refugees to go into. Well, one of those places they called, they had to pay to be interviewed. I've never heard any such thing. I think they got swindled. So they had to pay to be interviewed, and then they ate up a big chunk of their money, and they were ignored. So I found out about it because they contacted me about 2 or 3 days later, and immediately as soon as I found out, I contacted the organization. I wrote to the president of the organization. I told them that I'm an independent journalist. That should get their attention. Also told them I'm a retired Army colonel with 36 years of service, and that this is not how we help refugees. And here's the case officer's number. Here's the case officer's name. I will allow that the refugees have been embellishing. Maybe they're just desperate and they've overstated the case. But nonetheless, it's alarming. And I think I have a legitimate basis to ask you the question. The email went out Thursday night after I found out about this on Thursday. Friday, didn't hear anything. On Sunday, the head of that organization for that part of Texas showed up at their accommodation with groceries and $400 of cash assistance and gave them a new list of names and helped them find an apartment, and they've been settled. That's not supposed to happen. That's rare. But as far as handouts, I've heard from so many South Africans, Afrikaners in particular, but not exclusively, oh, we're self-starters. We don't want handouts. We're coming there. But then every time I turn around, people are asking these questions about, what do I get? What about this? Who's going to take care of me? What about this? Do I get free medical aid? Okay. You know, I don't hear the Congolese asking that question. I don't hear the Somalis asking that question. Hell, they come here, they defraud our government, become members of Congress. Ilhan Omar, you know, that's a refugee. She just came as a refugee. She's a member of Congress, and she won't shut up. Anyway, so look, I don't want to sound insensitive here, but there are soup kitchens, there are food pantries, there are food banks everywhere. There are thrift shops to buy inexpensive clothing. There are used car places to get used cars. There are ways to get around. We do not put refugees in a place where they're going to fail. If you fail, it's because of yourself. The family that went to Montana, that early on, and this was, people made a lot of fodder out of this without information, because some South African living in America got all snarky about it and thought she'd be famous on TikTok by making a video about it. And that family went to Montana. They asked to go to Montana. And for some reason, we foolishly said, okay, but there's no refugee assistance organization in Montana where they're at. The closest one is like, 90 minutes away or whatever. It's 90 miles away, something like that. So they were being handled remotely by someone over the phone, not someone that could see and go to the refugee center. In Twin Falls, there's a refugee center. I've been in the refugee assistance center. I've seen what the refugees have. I've met the lovely people on a Friday afternoon who were there, who work for that organization, who help refugees from all over the world. They're fantastic. They're lovely people. And it's like that all over the country. But these people were nowhere near anything like that. There was nothing to tolerate. And they were also a bit shy and reticent to engage. And they went there and they weren't given any help, basically, because there's no one there to help them. But they asked to go there. And they told me that. I spoke to that family after this thing became a brouhaha. Someone gave me their contact information. I called them. And they said, we asked to come here. I said, well, that's what people are saying. We did ask to come here. And I don't know why. Why would you want to go to that place in Montana? I would ask for somewhere else. But anyway, so I confirmed that a South African family living in Wyoming, about 5 or 6 hours away from them, or 4 hours away, offered free accommodation in a house they had that they used as a bed and breakfast, and offered to give them a car free of use. No charge to use the car or a truck or bucky or something like that for at least 6 months. They refused to move because they've been misinformed by the media who lie about these things and said that if you leave there, you lose your benefits. Well, the benefits we're talking about are refugee cash assistance, which isn't affected by Trump's law. That stays the same. Okay, that doesn't go away. Food stamps, which does change now, but when they came in earlier this year in May, it wasn't affected by that. Food stamps, WIC, refugee cash assistance, these are benefits that are legislated in law. Now, the food stamps are legislated out for refugees. Sorry about that. But these are federal benefits. It doesn't matter if you live in Wyoming or Wisconsin, in Florida or California. It doesn't matter. If you relocate, you still are entitled to those entitled benefits under the law. What you lose, and this is where people get confused. That's why I say benefits and services. Those are benefits that you're entitled to. Services are a refugee assistance officer coming to visit you, to hand you cash, to take you to the Social Security office, to help you get your Social Security number, showing you how to use public transportation, helping you craft your resume, providing daycare services for your children while you go places with the refugee officer. That's the services you lose. They're not benefits. That's not a benefit. It's a service. And we, the American taxpayers, spend $2.9 billion a year providing that to you refugees. So people need to understand that we put you in a place to give you a fair chance to succeed and get started right away. That's what we do. Immigrants come to this country, they pick where they want to go. And if they pick the wrong place, they can't find work, they got to go somewhere else. We put you in a place, like the reason people go to Twin Falls is that show. I saw at least 600 refugees, and that's not an embellishment. One of the things I'm trained to do is estimate crowd size. And I got there at the end of the day. It had been going on all day long when I arrived. It ended like 40 minutes after we got there. And there were 600 people there. And trust me, there ain't a lot of black people in Twin Falls, Idaho. There ain't a lot of people walking around with an abaya on. And as sure as hell ain't many people from Myanmar in Twin Falls before refugees arrived. They were all refugees. That company, specifically founded by a Turkish refugee who came here decades ago. He's a multi-billionaire, Chobani. He hires refugees because of his experience. And all of those people are prospering and doing well. So that was a very long answer to that question. What's the next question? I forget whose turn it is.
It's my turn
Okay.
still. So, Colonel, just to go back on the media and spreading false information or not fitting their narrative. So, like I said earlier, one thing I always try and tell the members, always trust what Colonel Wyatt or Professor G says. Obviously, I listen to Byron from Morning Shots and to Ronaldo Host, but they don't really focus so much on the refugees.
You're dead to me.
You have a lovely beard.
Listen,
Colonel.
you can listen.
Anyway.
You can listen to Rob Hersoff, but not those other two.
Okay. So, besides you and Professor G, who else can they trust?
Well, they don't have to trust me. Let me start by saying that. You don't have to believe
But
anything I
we do.
say. Well, I appreciate that. And I think that trust has been earned the whole time I've been doing this. But you don't have to trust me. As I've always said, I show people the receipts. I've done videos. I've shown the screenshots of what the embassy website says. And I've referred to it. I've pulled up elements of the Immigration Nationality Act when it comes to this program. It's the same thing with my news. If I'm speculating, or I don't call it speculation because I'm an analyst who's been very successful analyzing for 4 decades. If I analyze things, I tell you it's my analysis. It's my view, it's my opinion, it's my prediction, it's my expectation. But if I give you facts, I give you facts. And so that trust is earned. As far as this program, I don't know anyone else that's doing this. You got lots of people running around. So let's talk about motivation. I have chatted with Professor G. We've emailed, we've chatted, we've spoken on WhatsApp, and I find him to be a very credible, honest person. However, he's an attorney, and you know, all the good lawyers at the bottom of the ocean. I'll leave that comment there. I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, he's an attorney, and he looks at this from a legal perspective. And he's an asylum attorney. Asylum is different than refugee status. Asylum is a much higher threshold. In an asylum case, you have to prove you're innocent, which is contrary to our legal system. In our system, you are innocent until proven guilty. But in asylum, you're guilty until you prove that you deserve to get asylum. And that's why 95% of those cases are rejected, because most of them are economic refugees and they don't have a basis for it. In the refugee case, you have to articulate. And he and I have a slightly different view on that persecution issue. All right. He's approaching it from an asylum standpoint. Doesn't mean he's right or wrong. Doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. I'm right. Anyway, so on this, you can be persecuted not from the government. The pogroms in Belarus in the 19th century weren't executed by the Tsarist forces. They were executed by people who just hated Jews. And they rose up and attacked and murdered Jews. Same thing in Poland. Same thing in Russia and Ukraine. These things were done by people who weren't the government. So you can be persecuted and your life can be in jeopardy by other groups, vigilantes. You can also be persecuted by the business sector. If you can't find work and you're starving to death because of your race, that's persecution. If you can't find work because you're an incompetent twit, well, that's not persecution. That's a personal problem, and we can't help you. So we have a slightly different view on that. Okay, now motivations. I believe Professor G has the best of intentions here. The best of intentions. I don't think Professor G is trying to become a big and famous YouTube star, although I think he kind of likes it now, so he doesn't mind if he gets more subscribers. But his motivation to me appears to be from a good place, that he wants to inform people as best he can about what's going on. And he goes to great lengths to say, it's my opinion, it's not a fact, this is what I know, and this is what I know anecdotally. Now, what's my motivation? Well, I have a track record. I have a track record in which I can't share with people. It's in the classified community, but there's a matter of public record, all the jobs I've had. People see what I've done, the things I've changed. I mean, for instance, I wrote for the President of the United States, and 640,000 black Africans didn't starve to death because I wrote one report that the CIA tried to stop, and I kept pushing, and we got it approved, and the president took action. So, I mean, I'm not saying I'm a great, wonderful person. I'm sure I've done bad, nasty deeds to people that I don't remember. Maybe I forgot about purpose. But my point is that what's my motivation here? I didn't start my YouTube channel to become a YouTube celebrity or personality. I didn't start to get 100,000 subscribers. I already had my channel. I'm an early adopter of all technology. I had Instagram and MySpace and WhatsApp and BlackBerry Messenger, all these things before most people ever even heard of them. I adopted technology early. I've been building computers since I was in my teenager, using IBM data punch cards. So technology has always been something that's been in my suite of tools. I had all these accounts. When I retired from the Army, I started consultancy. And the plan was to get U.S. businesses to invest in Africa. Maybe I can make some money off that and get free trips to Africa and stay engaged intellectually. That was my motivation. A little coin beyond my retirement salary, that'd be nice. But then the COVID scam started and I had to cancel the first couple trips and then I couldn't travel. So what am I going to do? I was exercising before my hip became so arthritic and I couldn't exercise every day. So I walked in the morning, walked in the evening, stayed healthy, stayed fit, stayed sexy. You know, it was good stuff. And then on top of that, you have to be modest in this job. Otherwise it doesn't work. Anyway, but if I do say so myself. But then I need to keep my mind going. Intellectually, that's my stock in trade, my ability to communicate, analyze, investigate, and get message across people. So I said, you know what? Since people can't see what services I provide as a consultant, maybe I could use my YouTube channel, make a few videos. And it just seemed like an idea. So I made a couple videos, one on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, one on counterterrorism, one on SADC, one on trade. Yeah, I see a shape. That looks like the shape of Africa there, the shadow there on the side. Anyway, so I get that too in the afternoon. I get it right here in my face. It's tough.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's kind of frustrating. Anyway, so maybe if you flip the blinds up the other direction, it might turn the light away.
Okay, will you just excuse me for
Yeah,
sure.
2
seconds?
So my motivation was to support my consultancy, but that quickly turned into a situation where South Africans found my content interesting because I was talking about Africa and South Africa in particular, but also the world. And my channel grew from 2 to 23,000 subscribers. My viewers demanded that I monetize the channel, and those who were here from the beginning know that I refused to monetize it for a long time, for a few months, because I wasn't trying to make money. But I did it because they wanted emojis, they wanted longevity, and so I did it. So and no regrets. So that's how the channel began. And it went from me making videos on discrete topics, doing live streams. Giselle, her concert was one of the first ones I did back on the 7th of May, 2020. And it went from there. And it developed into something else. And the media arm, the online personality, became an element of my consultancy. I just finished a week of consulting at the War College. So my motivation, and this is very important, YouTube shadow bans me and blocks my channel and doesn't notify people. It unsubscribes my subscribers who are loyal subscribers all the time. So if it doesn't appear on your feed and it's not fresh in your mind, you stop watching my channel. That's just a natural. I never get anything from Morning Shot. I'm subscribed to them. It says all notifications. I never get a single notification from Morning Shot. That's YouTube. Anyway, so I don't have much time watching right now, but I used to watch Morning Shot a lot. Anyway, so by December 31st of 2024, I had made the decision that I'll never get bigger than 25,000 subscribers. I had 20,338 on December 31st. So I said, that's it. But I'll keep doing this because people rely on my news. I keep coming to South Africa. People tell me how important it is for them to have the objective analysis of the news and calling out the cockprot. And so I said I'd keep doing it, and it's never going to be anything. Then President Trump, we had Nobs and Kesey, assault people on that flight from Durban to Cape Town. And I made a video, and my prepared videos, have been getting about 2,000 views. And that's a lot of time in editing to make a video that almost nobody's watching. So it wasn't about being famous, but it is about, return on investment. I invest that kind of time. I'd like more people to see it. So I stopped making those videos in October, November, December for the most part and focused on the live streams for my audience that was loyal. And then Nobs and Kesey, I made a video, got 50,000 views. I'm like, whoa, people will watch these videos. It just has to be the right topic. So I started making videos and my subscriber count began to climb from the end of December until Trump became inaugurated. And then people want to hear about Trump, so it grew a lot. I went from 20 to 35,000 subscribers from December 31st to February 7th. That's a lot, 15,000 in 1 month. I hadn't had that in ages. That's before the Refugee program. Then the Refugee program, and I soared by June to 100,000 subscribers. So what's my motivation? Okay, I do make money off the channel, but I don't make money. In other words, I have a revenue stream for the channel, but after I pay taxes and I repay myself for the $50,000 plus that I put into this effort for the past 5 years, I'm still in the hole. And that's fine. And if I make $50,000 or $1 million, that's fine too. I didn't do this to make money, and I don't mind being well known. I don't mind making money, but my motivation is the truth. Everything to me about the truth and fairness, to treat people fairly. It is unfair to blame Afrikaners born after 1994 for what happened before that. They had no role in that. And most of them haven't benefited in some material way. Some have because their parents are wealthy because of what happened during that time frame. But that's the vast majority are not the case. That's an unfairness. It's also unfair for white South Africans to say that black South Africans will always vote for the ANC. That's uninformed, and I've been saying for 5 years, and the proof is played out in the past 5 years. I'm about fairness and I'm about the truth. And that's the bottom line. I would like to make money. I would love to have an X5 sitting in my front yard. I don't have one. I have a 10-year-old Chrysler with a dodgy transmission that likes to jump when I'm driving and scares the hell out of me. And I have but I've had it serviced and had it replaced, so nothing I can do about it. And I have a 21-year-old Toyota 4Runner. I'd love to get a brand new SUV to replace an X5 or get a nice sedan. But priorities are priorities. I pay my bills. I put money aside to save for the future, assuming I'll live to be 120. So I would have resources that long, and I take care of things. So my motivation is the truth and to share. And we have all these cockprodders coming up all over the place, trying to become famous, glomming on, stealing my content, going on TikTok, going on the YouTube channels, lying about me, taking clips in which I explain something or I repeat something somebody said that was false, and then saying I said it without the context. And it is what it is. I can't control, I can't stop it. But I will tell you that you're asking who you can rely on. You can rely on Professor G to tell you the truth, and you can rely on me to tell you the truth. I have no dog in the fight. While it was fantastically wonderful and heartwarming, and it brought tears to my heart, truthfully, to do 18 meet and greets on my last trip were over, well, we underestimated. I'm pretty sure it was over 2,000 people, but I've been saying 1,400 conservative estimate. At Open Plus, I know we had well over 300, possibly 500 people show up that day. But that was exhausting for me. People like, how's your vacation? Vacation, I spoke for 7 hours answering people's questions over and over again. And sometimes it's frustrating. I ask a question and people are sitting there and 2 minutes later, someone asks the exact same question. But I do it because I care. I care about people, and I care about black, white, and brown South Africans. So that needs to be straight to everybody. You know, I talk about on my channel, I've always focused on 3 cultures in South Africa specifically. Afrikaans culture, Afrikaners particularly, but not exclusively, that includes colors, Sotho, and Tswana. And because of those ones I'm very familiar with, and I think they all have great aspects of it that I promoted. So I think you can trust Professor G, you can trust me. That doesn't mean we're always right. He gets a thing or two wrong. I'm never wrong. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Anyway, all right. I think I've beaten that horse to death. Yeah, so Olga says she met me at the Century meet and greet. It was easy that I was there for 5 hours. Yep. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Charmaine, go ahead. We've had it from Chanell for a while, so it's your turn.
Sorry, I don't.
No, it's just as bad as before. I don't even know if we can figure out your questions. Why don't we do this? Charmaine, why don't you just hang on the chat and listen, okay? Because your connection's not getting better. We'll let Chanell ask the questions, okay? And you can WhatsApp her if she misses a question, okay? And okay, so let's do that. All right, Chanell, you get to ask yet another question because of her connection.
Okay, I just have one more question left, but I'm trying to just go through her questions here. Okay, so let me ask one that I think she could have asked perhaps was, obviously, Colonel, you've traveled extensively across...
Chanell, I'm sorry. Let me interrupt because I don't want to forget this and I don't want to miss your question. Star Chaser said, Morning Shot's a pretty good channel. Also, Citizen Concern, Truth Report, and Thomas Mabuza 360. I am not throwing shade on any of those. They're all reliable sources of analysis. We were asked a question about the refugee issue. None of those channels focus on the refugee issue. That's not my sole focus, but I am Professor G. That's what he does. He talks about the refugee program. It's part of what I do. That was the question, Star Chaser. I'm not throwing shade on any of those people. And if anybody goes and tells people I said bad stuff about them, I'm going to moor you. And I'm going to moor you so hard that you're going to think you're your stepsister. Okay? I didn't say anything bad about any of those channels. And by the way, I'm an anchor and a key early participant in the Truth Report. Rob Hersoff can confirm that if he's still here. So I have nothing bad to say about the Truth Report. Okay, sorry about that. Chanell, go ahead.
Okay, so obviously you've traveled extensively across the world. So what are your top travel tips or lessons for families preparing for their journey to the US, especially those flying internationally for the first time?
Okay, I'm sure everybody else heard that, but I got a hiccup in the question. I apologize. Please ask it one more time.
Okay, so obviously you've traveled extensively across the world. What are your top travel tips or lessons for families preparing for their journey to the US, especially those flying internationally for the first time?
Okay, great question. Fantastic. We like Thea had never been on an escalator before she went to Pretoria for her. Yeah, can you imagine that? She lived in the Free State. I mean, it's like the West Virginia of South Africa. Okay. All right. Yeah, I have traveled a lot, and there are travel tips. Number one, this shouldn't be a problem for South Africans because if you're flying out of OR Tambo or Cape Town, There aren't a lot of pickpockets floating around the airport, but in some countries that's an issue. But generally, it's good advice. You keep your valuable documents in a spot where they can't be reached. In other words, you don't keep things in your back pocket in a pair of jeans where people can reach in and grab it, because you get distracted in an airport. You're busy trying to check your bags in, or you're hungry, you're trying to get this place, or you're leaving and you're emotional and your focus isn't on your security. Your focus should always be at any airport on your personal security. You need to focus on that. Whether you're in Charleston, South Carolina, or Atlanta, or wherever you're at, focus on security, your personal items. People pick up things intentionally or accidentally, pick up a bag and walk away with it. So you need to keep your personal things close to you, okay? Now, that's the first thing. Second thing when it comes to traveling is that you need to be where, you need to be where you need to be before you need to be there. Does that make sense? All right. So, we are told here for international travel, you have to be at the airport 2 hours before the flight. There's reasons for that. Sometimes there are bottlenecks of security. I've seen it at Tambo. Now, the good news for me is inside South Africa, I fly South Air and I pay for a business ticket, which is like, a couple $100 more than the other ticket. and so I get to go through the Discovery line, which there's usually nobody there. That's nice. I don't have a Discovery card, but anyway. But so you have to be there, and you also have to plan on there may be, it's better to be at the airport early, not 10 hours early, but be there early than get there late if you can avoid it, okay? Now, if the embassy's taking you there, that's not under control. But you'll have connecting flights. You'll land in Atlanta, and you're going to have to make it. Atlanta's a big airport. You're probably going to have to take the train. And you got to make sure, because if you misread the train, you get off at Terminal C instead of Terminal D, you're going to have to get back on the train or walk that long distance. And I don't recommend you walk the long distance because you're tired. If you land in Atlanta, I recommend you take the train. It's free. You just get on the train. It takes you between the terminals because it's a big airport, the busiest in the world now. It's surpassed Chicago here. And then get off. And don't panic if you get off the wrong place. And when you get off the train, because people are trying to get out, people are trying to get on. Move away from there, and then you can usually take the escalator to go up to the level. But if you're in the wrong spot, just wait for the next train, get back on it. And that's why you want to make sure you get there early. My first thing is, say when you land in Atlanta, the first thing you should do after you make sure you got your testicle spectacles and got all your stuff, make sure you got everything. Leave your gate. Make sure you got everything. Get away from the gate where people are exiting. Make sure you got all your bags. Your kids are with you. Did they bring their little rucksack? Okay. Do you have your carry-on? Do you have everybody? Okay. Where's Liesl? Where the hell Liesl go? Okay. Make sure you got everybody. Then away from the gate. Don't block the gate. Move away from the gate. Gather everybody together. Look for the board to make sure you're connecting flight. Flight times change. Flights are delayed. Flights are canceled. Okay. They're often delayed. That happens a lot. It's supposed to be this time. So check. Find out which terminal you have to be at. Then get there. Don't go, oh, look, it's Georgia, Mugs, Starbucks. No, go to your gate. Find your gate so you have it. You know where it's at. Once you're there, confirm it's still the same because gates change. It might say on your ticket, your boarding pass that you have, this is your gate. And you get there, it's not K22, it's Alpha 6. Get there. Okay, once you get there, you found it. Then you can go get some food if you want to burn money and pay $35 for a hamburger at an airport. But my recommendation, which comes back to that point, is you can't really bring food into America, okay? I do know people that make it in the country with biltong, and I won't say who they are. I don't know who they are. Anyway, but you can't bring food. So on the plane, enjoy your meal, but take some snacks along with you for the flight. You can do that. You can take them on the plane, okay? You can't take liquids unless that's changing now. That changed from the UK. From UK to the US, you can take liquids again now. It's crazy. I just found out coming back from England. But normally you can't take liquids over a certain 200 milliliters, I think it is. So take with you a few snacks, whether it's biltong or something like that. You can eat that on the flight. And then if they give you snacks on the flight, put a few in your bag if they're closed, if they're sealed. Now, if it's open, it's food. If it's meat, you're not going to be able to bring it in. And then once you get here, if you have to get something to eat, then go ahead and get something to eat. But it's going to be expensive at the airport. And if you got 3 or 4 kids, you're going to be spending over $100 in the airport just to get a sandwich or something like that. I mean, a salad in Atlanta is like $17. $17. Do the math on that. Okay, so airport stuff is expensive. And so my recommendation is if you can avoid it, don't get anything at the airport. Wait till you get your final destination. You'll be fed on the plane. It's a 14 to 17 hour flight depending on the wind, and usually about 15 to 16 hours, 15 and a half hours. So it's a long time. And during the flight, my recommendation is occasionally, especially if you're a little bit older, you get up occasionally if you can, when it's okay with the seatbelt light off, to walk to the back of the plane and stretch your legs so you don't get thrombosis, things like that. Okay? That doesn't mean go for a walkabout and walk the whole time. Just say do it occasionally. Now, if you have medication, prescription medication, take your prescription medication on your person, in your carry-on or your purse or whatever it is you carry it on, okay? Take it with you. I have a black carry-on. Many people see with my black satchel, which I stick my laptop in, which makes it heavy, but I also have any medication I might have in there and any pens and writing material and reading magazines. That all goes in there. And then lately I've been carrying my British and Irish Lions, collapsible gym bag, because I can stuff that full of a spare pair of underwear, spare pair of socks. And that's a good idea. One spare of socks and underwear at a minimum, maybe a spare t-shirt or something like that to change into when you get to the other side. Otherwise, you're going to feel pretty grubby. But and if they lose your bag and you have to wait for your bag, you're going to want something to put on that's fresh and clean, okay? So, but don't go start loading up your carry-on with 35 shirts and pants and underwear and your jab and everything there, because you got to carry that. And if it's overweight, they won't let you take it. And then you got to start throwing your clothes away and you're going to be upset. So take your medicine on your person. Be smart about how you pack your carry-on. Now, if you have more stuff that you can carry and you have more bags, the airlines will let you pay, but it's expensive to pay for an extra bag, and they'll check it through. So once you get a ticket and you're told which airline you're flying on, you can inquire about taking an extra bag or two, or each person. If you got the money, you can pay for it. Well, good on you. Good on you. And then they could bring more crap into the country. stuff into the country. So beyond that, on the flight, if you've got earphones that plug in to a standard RJ35 jack, what is a standard earpiece like on the phones used to have, now they're mostly Bluetooth. And some of them now do Bluetooth, although I think it's crazy all these Bluetooths turn on the flight. Then you're going to want to bring that earpiece because it's your personal one, but they'll issue one on the flight. So if you've got kids, you're going to want to keep them entertained. You can take power banks with you, but you got to carry them with you. You can't put them in your check luggage. No, nothing like that goes your check luggage. You can take a power bank with you and use the recharge. Most of the flights coming across now, you can recharge your phones, but the charging is so slow, so it really doesn't charge, especially if you have a big phone like I do, an S21 with a big battery in it, 5,000 milliamps, and then this thing won't recharge. It'll just stay at the same level. So I always take a power bank and recharge it so that I have a fresh one. Bring your mobile. If you have international roaming, you'll be able to use it when you get here. From a South African carrier, but you're probably going to pay a fortune for those calls. So my recommendation is not to use it. Once you get here, you're going to get to a place pretty quickly, and you might want to leave it when you land. If you've got family back in South Africa, hey, we arrived safely in Atlanta. You send them a WhatsApp or something like that, but don't do much more than that because your data gets expensive unless you have roaming that's included by your carrier, which usually isn't the case. Once you get to where you're going, they're going to set you up and get you a mobile phone, and you don't have to throw your South African phones away. If, however, you have a contract phone in South Africa that is under contract, it's probably blocked from using other carriers, so you have to get unblocked. If you know any Indians, go to one of their shops and they'll fix it for you so it's no longer blocked. I'm just saying. Anyway, they're pretty good at that. And that's not a racial comment. That's a statement of fact. Indian tech is pretty good. All right. So, but once you get here, you can get an inexpensive phone, or you might even be handed one by the refugee assistance people. They might help you. So don't fret on that. Okay. And then get where you're going, decompress, get something to eat, get some rest, and then wake up and be refreshed and be ready to go. And so for travel, I think that's some of the best things. People could say you should be well rested for travel, and that's probably smart because you're fresh and you're alert. But I can tell you that because of the pace of work I do, oftentimes I'm not refreshed. I'm exhausted when I go to the airport, but I'm also very cognizant of what's going on around me. And so, but when you have very valuable things on a flight, like passports and things like that, I don't recommend that you put them in an overhead bin. I carry a great white hunter vest that has hidden pockets in it, and my passport's inside there. And if I have any cash, I'm not going to say where I put the cash, but I don't leave things in places where somebody might grab my carry-on by mistake, if that makes sense, okay? Because if you lose your passport, you're screwed. Your life just became very uncomfortable because now you need a new passport from South Africa, and you can't get in the country, and you're sitting in Atlanta. Well, there's no South African embassy in Atlanta, so you got a problem. So those are the most important things. Keep those documents, and also whatever paperwork you get, the I-94, whatever form it is that they give you for the refugee thing. When you come in, understand this. They're better now, but generally speaking, U.S. Customs Immigration are just not very friendly people. And they're not unfriendly to you because you're South African. They're unfriendly to me as an American with a diplomatic passport and a military ID card. That's just who they are. Having said that, my recent experiences the past 2 years have been much better. The people have been very friendly when I've come in, but occasionally they're brusque. That's not meant as a slight against you. It's not because you're white or brown or blue or grackberry. They deal with lots of people, and some of them problem children. Sometimes they have to escort people back to a holding cell at immigration. So if you see that, don't be shocked. You have people trying to slip in the country illegally, or people on a watch list, and they come in, and it happens sometimes. So, and Atlanta is a big airport. If you get through to the line and there are 800 people waiting, that's not unusual. It's uncommon today, but it's not unusual. So don't freak out on that. Get to your connection, get to your gate, Get to your final destination. You'll be met by the refugee assistance people who will greet you there and take you probably to a temporary accommodation, possibly a hotel, and then they'll put you into your more permanent place very quickly and go from there. I think that's some pretty good advice. Did I miss anything? I'm sure you have questions because I'm not thinking of everything because I've traveled millions of miles all over the world, lived in 16 countries. I've been to over 80 countries. And so a lot of this is second nature for me. Oh, here's something. Here's a good piece of advice. Okay. Very good piece of advice. Put your liquids that go into your check bag, if you have shampoo or soap that's liquid or something like that, or a hand cleaner or sanitizer, put it in a Ziploc bags. That's what we call it in America, those plastic seal bags. Put every liquid in its own seal bag. Underarm, I put its own seal bag because underarm, I wipe it, it gets on the side of the container and it rubs in the bag and it messes other things up. Toothpaste, same thing. Put your toothpaste inside a zip bag. Everyone a separate one. Carry extra zip bags. Put them in a little pouch inside your suitcase so you can put things in there. That's what I do. And that has proven to be one of the most useful things I've ever done. It keeps, because the planes are going up to 35,000 feet. Pressure changes. And the pressurization isn't the same in the cargo compartment that it is in the cabin where people are at. So the pressure changes. Those things can pop. And then you have shampoo all over your clothes. And it's a disaster. It stains. And now you got this white stripe across your shirt that's purple and it's ruined. So be smart about that. And if you can put your toiletries inside a toiletry bag and zip it up, put them in a Ziploc bag first or the plastic bag, then put them inside there and put it in your thing. Don't overpack. Pack for the season. If you're coming to America in November, December, January, February, it's winter time everywhere. So you can bring a puffer jacket. It may not be hot when you get on the plane in Joburg or Cape Town, but when you get off the plane in Atlanta, it's going to be chilly even in Atlanta. And when you get to Montana, you're going to be freezing your butt off. So your puffer jackets from K-Way, they're lovely. They're sexy. They'll keep you slightly warmer, but they're not cold winter weather. But once you get here, you'll get settled. You'll be able to find. Don't go out and go buy a bunch of parkas. But pack for the season. If you come next March, April, May, June, it's summer, spring, summer here. You can wear shorts, whatever you're comfortable in. Okay, I think I beat that to death, but I probably missed a few things.
Okay, I'm trying to think now what I'm going to ask next. Well, I have one question left. I think Charmaine had like 3 or 4 more left, but I don't want to take up too much of your time, Colonel. So,
well, my news program is supposed to start in 1 hour. I haven't researched it and I haven't set up, so I'm probably going to skip the news and just do the refugee chat at 2:00. But go ahead. So ask your questions.
Okay, so obviously you just mentioned, you've lived in many different countries before. So from your perspective, what 5 practical things would you recommend new refugees focus on to give themselves the best possible chance of success and integration in their new country, socially, culturally, and professionally?
Wow, that's pretty wide open in 5 things. So I've never been a refugee, but I have had to adjust to environments. I've lived in majority Muslim countries. I've lived in plenty of majority Black African countries. I've lived in majority Black settlements in America where I was almost the only white person around, and also majority Hispanic. So I've lived all over the world in different circumstances. One of the first things I can say is that arrest your expectations. What I mean by that is that when you arrive, this isn't Benoni. This isn't Brockpen. This isn't Hillbrow. Okay, now I've mentioned the bad places. I'm just kidding. This also isn't, Santon City. This isn't Sunnyside. This isn't Milnerton. This isn't Tableview. This is wherever you wind up in America. So this isn't how it's done. No, you're in a different place. People do things differently. They're still humans. They still interact. They communicate differently. And be aware that language is not the same. I think some people realize that you guys foolishly call a traffic signal a robot. Well, it's not a robot. That's what R2-D2 is. That's a robot. It's a traffic signal. That's what the rest of the world says. Get on board, South Africa. So things are different. Expect them to be different. But at the same time, things are the same. Humans reproduce in the same way. Humans date in the same way. Humans have bad relationships in the same way. People hate their neighbors the same way they hate their neighbors elsewhere. People love their neighbors the same way. So understand that things will be different, but many things will be the same. And if you come with that approach and realize that you are a guest here, you're not entitled to anything, and you can be sent home. Take that approach, then you'll take it as a respectful arrival in a country where you can contribute and you can be safe. That's the biggest thing. And that's the other thing. For South Africans, this is very specific. I wouldn't tell this for Germans or Ukraine, well, maybe Ukrainians, but not for Germans, not for Norwegians coming to America. For South Africans, relax. Look around. with one exception, every person I've talked to has been put in a safe location that they're very comfortable in. And the biggest change for them, you hear it in the refugee interviews all the time, is that my kids can walk in the street, and I don't have to keep them within 50 meters of the house, and we can go places, and it's safe. We feel safe here. You should be in an environment like that. If you're not, contact me. All right, I can't promise I'll fix it, but I can promise I'll address it. So that's one thing. Next thing is that if you're worried about milk toast, and you're worried about Cook Sisters, and you're worried about Doerwurst and biltong, don't fret. There are South Africans that live in America, and some of them make these things, and they sell these things online. Some of them imported from South Africa, which, by the way, are now 30% more expensive, in case you didn't know that. So you can get a little taste of home from that. Also, here's some advice. If you're a Coca-Cola drinker, don't buy American Coke. Buy the Coke from the warehouse stores that comes from Mexico, because it's made with cane sugar, and it's closer to tasting South Africa Coke than the American Coke, because that's made with high fructose corn syrup. American foods for Africans tend to be rich. Oftentimes full of sugar, artificial sugar. And so that's something you have to get accustomed to. But you can get around that. I mean, flour doesn't have sugar. You can buy flour, make your own things, and cook your own food from that. So here's another piece of advice coming over here. When you get here, things can be expensive, especially after 4 years of Joe Biden's ridiculous inflation, which they lied and said was 9% one year. It was more like 35, 40% that year. Everything that I spend money on costs twice as much as it did 5 years ago. That's a statement of fact. Almost nothing. I mean, my Starbucks 5 years ago was $4 for a Starbucks. Now it's $7.40 for a Frappuccino. That's insane. That's just one example. Turkey went from $2 and something a pound to $9 a pound for ground turkey. I don't even eat it anymore. It's too expensive. So that said, there are lots of inexpensive. We have Aldi here, which is a German store, a discount store. You can get off-name brands for very reasonable prices and shop there. We also have Lidl in many places in the United States now. And we have chains that are regional, like Piggly Wiggly in the South, but Kroger's in the Midwest. And then here, Winn-Dixie in the South. Here in Pennsylvania and Maryland, we have Giant. In Maryland, it's Giant Eagle. Here, it's just Giant, but it's the same thing, owned by a Dutch company of all things. It was founded here in Carlisle. And then, all around the country, we have Safeways. But the big supermarkets tend to be expensive in some things. So we have sales. And if you get a newspaper, traditionally there's a flyer on Sunday newspaper that has all the sales that are coming up. But now you get a lot of that online. Just look and search and you'll find sales. So you can download apps and get discounts at some stores. But one thing you're going to do is, if you have one of the big discount clubs near you, now it costs money to join it. So you may not be able to do it right away, but as soon as you can do it, Costco, BJ's, and Sam's Club, which is owned by Walmart, Sam's Club. Those three are discount. You can get bulk stuff because they're designed to provide stuff for businesses, but they cater also to individuals. They don't make their money normally off of Costco especially, don't make their money off the price of the good. They make their money off your membership fee. And it's $100 a year for Costco or something like that to be a member. And so if you have 10 million members, that's $1 billion in revenue just from that. So they make their money from that. And they keep their costs lower that way. You can buy in bulk or you can buy individual. So you can get clothing there. I was wearing trousers all this past week that I bought at BJ's for $20. $20 for a pair of pants today. If I go to a clothing store, that's going to be $80 to $120 for the same pair of pants. I got them there. They're the same quality. It's just not a name brand. I don't need a sexy name brand. I mean, the beauty comes from here, not my bum. Anyway, but seriously. So my recommendation there is that you get in on that very quickly and find one of those. Also, on our last conversation, Letitia mentioned free cell phone service and free cell phone from one of the companies, which is really amazing. I think it might have been US Cellular or something like that. Welcome US or something like that. And it's under T-Mobile. I don't know, but that's pretty interesting. The refugee assistance ought to be able to help you with that. If you can get a free cell phone service for a period of time, that's all the better. Anything you do to save yourself money. And then on top of that, and refugee assistance officers often tell you about this, especially in the spring and summer, people have yard sales. And a lot of people get rid of things they don't want anymore. Sometimes, especially women, sorry ladies, especially women who buy a bunch of clothes and never wear it. Why? Because they didn't get around to it. And then guess what? Now, maybe you weigh a few more pounds than when you bought it, okay? So you can't fit in it. So not throwing needles, but I've been to many yard sales and seen unworn women's clothing, name brand sometimes, for $5, for $2 for a dress, just to get rid of it. So yard sales, that's an American thing. You can go there. You can get a television for $30, that works. Plug it in before you leave, make sure it works. So consider that before you run off to Walmart and buy a TV for $200 or buy clothing. So, if you're humble, that's the next thing. Be humble. All right. I grew up in different circumstances, at times upper middle class, times abject poverty. You have to be humble from a standpoint, like this is going to disgust some people, but I'm going to show you, humility is important in life, I think. As the commander of the Veterans Organization, we had Farmers Fair this past weekend, and we had a lot of people in the Cantina Club. We gave out candy to the kids in the parade. I was on the float when we were handing out candy. They tossed the kids lining the route, and it was one of the biggest events they'd had in years. Well, somebody took one of those lollipops, and they had it, and they went to the restroom. We have 2 urinals in there. They twisted up the wrapper for it. Instead of throwing the rubbish bin, which is 3 meters away and clearly visible, they threw it in the urinal, and they urinated on it. Well, I can't have rubbish in it, so I had to pick up somebody's piss-stained lollipop wrappers and throw it in the trash. When I talk about humility, I'm a retired colonel, and I don't need to be picking up people's piss stains. But that's what I did. And that's what I'm saying is that humility is important. And as a new arrival in the country, humility matters because you don't know the lay of the land. You don't know the law of the land. You're learning that, and you're in somebody else's house. Okay? So have some respect. Don't be the bad tourist who's here. Don't be the entitled person who comes here. And I think those things, that's probably 3 or 4, and maybe because I went sub-levels, maybe all 5 things. But I think that's a good way to get a start. The discount clubs, look for the bargains everywhere. Be humble. Understand that this isn't home, but in some ways it is home. And expect that. Also, get engaged. Not to another person. Hopefully you're married already or not married, but get engaged in what's going on. There are things happening. And some of the things are free. There'll be parties in parks, not in the wintertime, but in the spring and summer. There'll be celebrations in the local community. We have a pickle fest in a town nearby here because the town is called Dillsburg, Dill Pickle. So they have a fest. It was named after a guy named Matthew Dill, but they try to monopolize on that, take advantage of the fact that the town's called Dillsburg and Dill Pickle. So they have a pickle festival, and it's a big event. People come out for it. They also do a Memorial Day parade. They do that Farmers Fair thing. So communities do things like that. So go be part of that. Meet people. Don't be shy. Don't hide away. And don't feel that you can't network with other South Africans, black, white, and brown. Or if you just want to be an Afrikaner or a Boer or just talk to Boers, there are plenty, tens of thousands of South Africans living here already. Some naturalized citizens, some immigrants who are in the process or have a permanent residency card, and some here on H-2A. A lot of that. So don't feel isolated. And if you ever feel like you're all alone, stuck somewhere in South Dakota, not near anybody, come on this channel and talk to people. Yeah, let us know, and we'll see if we can't get you in touch with somebody. All right, I had a couple super chats. Let me get to those. So let me go back a second here before I take the next question. There's a few I missed here, so I'm going to go back as far as I can. Okay, Veroshka's membership. She changed a platoon leader. Thank you for that. Jim Schneeberger. Interesting. That's a very German name. Became a member. Thank you, and welcome to your RDP house. No fire pool. We don't deliver those. You have to build it yourself. And then Snippets from Africa gave 10 Rand 49 super chat. That's the third super chat. Thank you for that. And then we have Beast Mode JJ gave 100 Rand. What should the affidavit from a non-traveling parent say for the child since they required it but didn't specify the content? Beast J Mode, I have no idea. Whatever legal requirement the South African government requires for you to travel and take your child out of the country, that's the requirement you must meet. It's not a U.S. requirement. Not a U.S. requirement. If you travel by yourself from the U.S. to the U.K. with your daughter, they don't ask. It's your daughter. It's her passport. She's traveling with you. You come in the U.S. from U.K. or Germany with your daughter or your son. We don't worry about that. However, South Africa, because of its anti-trafficking laws, has a very specific requirement. They were requiring birth certificates in order to enter or leave the country with children. I don't know if that's still the case. I think it is. Now, if you have a parent and they require approval, that's part of that process. That's a South African thing. So whatever legal requirement they have, that's what you have to meet. I'm not a legal expert in South Africa's legal code, although I know some of it. So you're going to have to get whatever an attorney tells you. You have to have permission. Usually, it's a notarized or authorized letter that it's officially recognized, and it says you have authority to take the child out of the country. Okay. All right. And then we've got, come on down here. Just Ainer gave 14 Rand. Thank you for your efforts. Appreciate it. Thank you for making it rain. Appreciate that. Jessica's thanking us for the information. And then Tuscan Sun 123. I must have talked a long time. A lot of this came through here. I have a question, Colonel. Do you do the coupons for better deals? Yeah, absolutely. Do I do them? Oh, absolutely. So the Starbucks that I drink, these things here, used to cost $10 for 12 bottles. And that's was 281 milliliters. Yeah, that's what they used to cost. Then Joe Biden came. And because they raised the price, they thought they'd be clever, and they put 15 in a case instead of 12. And they tried to outsmart us. So then it was $14 for 12, and I would buy them when on sale for 12, or $14 for $15. Excuse me, $15 for $14 for 15 bottles. They would go on sale for $11. I'd buy them. Then they went to 17. Now they are $22 for 15 bottles. When they go on sale for 19 or 17, I buy 10 cases or more. So I do shop. I am a frugal shopper. And the word is frugal, not cheap. Cheap is different. Frugal is smart. Okay. How's California? It's a beautiful place to visit. Matt Max gave 35 rand. So just a reminder, David's question on 3 refugees tickets on News 24. Yeah, okay. If you can bear with me for a moment, Chanell. Let me address this, David's question. I said I'd get to it a little bit later on. Ask me patient. So this wasn't a super chat. I just happened to catch in chat. So I didn't get the gist of it, but David was talking about some network. I don't know what he's talking about. I didn't see what it was. But basically, the New York or the Washington Post ran a story and said that the U.S. government overbooked 50 seats, and that's because Afrikaners chose not to go. They just didn't show up for the flight. Yeah, there's a degree of truth in that. It's also unfounded speculation on their part. The U.S. government didn't tell them why all 50 people weren't there. The U.S. government told them that they habitually book multiple seats and that they don't always fill the seats. And then they turned it into, and maybe they said that there are people who change their mind. That happens sometimes. We know that Erica would have already been in America. She could have come here, but she was going to come by herself, and she's partially disabled because of her 2 strokes. And so that was a difficult situation for her. She'd been approved. She's an approved refugee. She had a flight date. She had a ticket. She asked them to postpone it. So she didn't come over. So she would have been one of those people if that had been that flight that was part of those 50 seats. So the New York Times, or not the New York Times, the Washington Post speculated and I think misrepresented that. So I did say sarcastically in my program, some of you waiting to come over here, blame it on other Afrikaners. They aren't getting on a plane. That was sarcasm. So there's always going to be people who change their mind. As I said from the beginning, you're not signing a contract. You didn't sign with the New York Knicks or with Arsenal to say, I'm going to go there and play for you. You've expressed a statement of interest. You do an application. You have no legal obligation. Now, it's very frustrating and unfair that you waste other people's time if you decide, or you're unsure, or if you're a dratsitter, you just don't know what you're going to do. Get off the fence, because if you sit on that, it gets wedged in your bum, and that hurts like hell. So get off that fence. Either you want to go or you don't want to go. But yes, I'm sure there have been a few people who changed their mind for whatever reasons. I have a friend whose spouse agreed they want to come over. They applied. Then the spouse's father, who has a business and relies on that other spouse, without giving genders away, because it might give away who it is, convinced that spouse that they should stay in South Africa. The other spouse is unsafe. The other spouse has survived murders in their home as a child on a farm, has had their in-law murdered on a farm recently, and has been denied employment opportunities and has been threatened, their life threatened because of what they do. And they're just good people. That spouse has had the interview without the other spouse and is coming to America. All right. So that means the first person changed their mind. So that's an empty seat that would have been booked for. So yes, there's some truth to it, but guys, even if it's true, what if 50 people changed? There's 100,000 other people. Okay. Relax. The U.S. government does this all the time. We buy flights for a bunch of military from a unit that's going to fly. Some can't make it. We have empty seats. The government gets refunded for those. They don't have to eat the cost. Not like you and me. If we don't make the flight, we lose the money. Or we pay $500 to rebook it. The government has a great deal with airlines. The government has the best deal. They don't always get the best price. They usually get a good price because they buy in bulk and they can cancel anytime. That's why we rely on U.S. carriers, because we can dictate to them as a government how they interact with the government. If they want to do business, have a license, then they have to give government preferential rates to save the taxpayer money. They have to give flexibility so we can cancel last minute. And that's what happens here. So, but the Washington Post approached this from a standpoint that this is a bad program given to a bunch of racists who opposed and imprisoned and beat and murdered black people. Why should they come here? It's racist. That was their approach. And it's quite obvious when they falsely quoted. And oh, by the way, the comments that I got back on the Washington Post, because I commented on that story about Charles Kleinhahn's house when they said that he said, well, I don't have a maid, and who's supposed to do my kitchen, all that. He did say that. After he said that this is a place where you have to stand on your own. People don't get handed things here. For instance, and I'm not verbatim, but this is just what he said. For instance, I don't have a maid here. I have to do the work on my own. They said he complained about it. That's not what he said. So I wrote back, and then these people, some smartasses in the Washington Post, these bootlicking sycophants, well, They linked to the Daily Maverick story. If you did the interview, you should be able to read that article. I read the article by Rebecca Davis on the 6th of August. And she links to my story so you can watch it. They didn't do that. They linked to her when she included that quote there. And she included it in the context. They omitted the context and they lied. So anyway, that's a little bit off track there. But anyway, I had to address that. Understand the media, by and large, have no interest in telling you the truth. They have an agenda. And there's the perfect proof of it right there. Why would you omit the part where he said, because that was an uplifting portion. Don't come here with a sense of entitlement. Come here prepared to work your ass off. That's basically what he said. But they turned it into, oh, look at these privileged white people. Used to have Miss Daisy drive them around. I know that's backwards. You drive Miss Daisy, but used to have the house help, clean up after the snot-nosed children. Now they don't have that. Look at these privileged little turds, racist. That's what they presented. They didn't say that, but that's the impression. And if you read the comments and the abuse that Charles Kleinhaus got by these hate wankers on Washington Post, you'll understand that's exactly what was in play here. They were trying to make you all look evil and bad without looking at people's individual cases. No doubt there are evil and bad white people in South Africa. There are evil and bad people here. They work for the Washington Post and they serve in Congress. So, all right, that was a long one there. Sorry about that, Chanell. So it gave you time to go through it gave you time to go through the questions. Go ahead.
I only have 2 questions left. So when I don't want to divulge too much because I'm not sure what I'm allowed to divulge or not. But when you get the links from Americanas with your unique ID and you have to complete your details, they ask you if you have family members in the US that are able to help you with initial housing and all of that. So obviously I have a brother who is a US citizen. He's in Ohio, and I have cousins who are US citizens in Florida. I won't be able to go live with them. But yet I still said yes, because I don't want to say no and then they tell me, but you have family in the US. So will there be a certain time during the interviews that I could just, discuss this with USCIS?
Yes. And there's some people in the chat who have gone through interviews. Yes, during the interview, you should be able to raise a question about that because you answered honestly. That's good. That doesn't mean you're going to go to Ohio or Florida. And given the choice, I would go to Ohio if I were you. Just saying.
I don't want to. I love Florida.
You can have Florida. Okay. Anyway, but so you have family. That doesn't mean they expect you to live in their home. What it does mean is that instead of being, the only South African that's stuck in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, there's no other South Africans around. We do have a refugee assistance officer. Instead of being the lone South African that's stuck in that situation, they can put you near people who ostensibly you have a good relationship with, who know where Costco is. And they can also take you in as a guest because they remember Costco, for instance, or they know where the good places to go to take your kids to play are. They already know someone. Maybe they work for someone that has jobs available and they can say, hey, they're inclined to help you because they're established. They have Social Security numbers. They pay taxes, ostensibly. I hope they do. They're in this country illegally, and they are already comfortable here. And so it's the familiar. They want to put you with the familiar so here's an example of why this goes sideways. So let me give an example here. We sent a bunch of Somalis to Georgia and the refugee program. One Somali wound up in Maine. They went up there on their own. And they wound in a town where the Mainers are very friendly. It's all white, 99% white. And they helped this guy because they were friendly people. And they had lots of programs. And they gave they got like a cheap rental place, cheaper than other people got because people were trying to help out. And then the state has generous benefits that Georgia must not have had. And so they're getting all these handouts and people are friendly and everything. Well, he told everybody. And then a bunch of Somalis moved to that town in Maine. And suddenly there were a whole bunch of Somalis. We're talking dozens and hundreds of Somalis. Then they started demanding things like Sharia law and other things and create all kinds of problems. Anyway, but the point of that story is not what happened there, but he was the only guy up there. There was nothing around. There's no familiar, the like. So that's why they would let you go near your family, is that there's the like. And the same thing if you have a job, say you work for an American company. A lot of South Africans work for American companies remotely. Some of those companies are willing to hire those people when they come over here, still remotely or, at their headquarters. If it's remotely, it won't matter where you go in America. But if their headquarters is Minneapolis, and they offer you a job there, then you go to the interview. Hey, here's a letter of employment. They've offered it to me. I already work for them. Can I go to Minneapolis? which I don't personally recommend, but I'm just saying. Anyway, so I mean, that's how that comes into play. Mad Max says, yes, they will ask you if you want to live near them or with them. If they approve, if the family approves, and if they do, they will contact your family U.S. to confirm. That's where I was headed with this. So thank you for the 7 Rand, Mad Max. That's exactly right. They don't expect you to live with family. You're not required to. And you're not even required to live near them. For instance, if you hate your sister and she lives in Nevada, then you're like, I will go anywhere but Nevada. My sister is a biatch. I don't want to be near her. Please put me anywhere but Nevada. And they will do that. We don't want, the whole point of the refugee program is to save people who are suffering and at risk of being killed or starving to death, something like that, or just being abused. And that we give them a good start on this side. That's the whole purpose of it. Cool beans.
Okay, so now that you mentioned not Minneapolis, last question. If you personally had to choose, which 3 US states would you consider the best? And what will the particular factors be?
Okay, so that's an impossible question to answer. By the way, we got 639 likes now for 600 people here. Thank you for that. We've had 4,200 people tune in during the course of this, so that's awesome. Okay, so it's impossible to answer. For number one, I'm not like most South Africans. I'm not afraid of the cold. I walk around in shorts in the wintertime, as people know, and march through snow on exercising, snow up to my knees with wearing shorts. So that's because I'm a Viking. It's in my blood. So that's the first thing. But South Africans like warm for the most part, whether they're white, black, or brown. They like warm. They're afraid of the cold, and they think puffer jackets are winter gear. They're not. They're just they're just to attract a mate. That's what puffer jackets are from K-Way. They don't really keep you warm anyway. All right, so that will be a consideration for South Africans. So you'd have to put that in play. Next would be a lot of South Africans who want to come over here are politically conservative, religiously conservative, and they want to be in a place that's conservative. There are conservatives everywhere in America. So let me just state that. But there are places that are generally more conservative than other places. Next, you want to go to a place that ideally has no income tax because you're going to earn an income. If you don't pay income tax, you have more money in your pocket. So that's a consideration. See, notice I go to the money. That's for up front. Some people want to be near other South Africans. I don't think that's a legitimate consideration. You should go a place where you're comfortable, you're safe, and you have a chance to make some money and you have a good employment environment. So the next is, what is the job situation? Well, the job situation in America is 4.1% unemployment nationwide. Some states like Iowa have less than 2% unemployment. That said, Iowa has a lot of remote communities, and so you might not want to go there because they're remote communities, unless you like living in the middle of the free state in Iowa. All right, so lots of considerations. I would say the opportunity to succeed, and that would be the jobs environment, and employment in the area, and not just working at Burger King, but maybe work at a place that pays you good money. And then ultimately, you're going to want to you have kids, you're going to want to, if that comes into play, good schools. We have good schools all over the country. We have bad schools. So you could be in a state and, the next community has much better schools. So maybe, you slide over to a different place once you get established and move your kids to that school. So I would say that it's great to find a place that has taxes, that has a family environment, that has a conservative outlook, generally speaking, and has a climate that's conducive to South Africans most of the time, because you're not going to find perfect. So a lot of people like Florida, but Florida for me is Hurricane Alley, and it's full of old people waiting to die. It's God's waiting room. It's like Howick. It's God's waiting room. All the retirees live down there, and people don't know how to drive because they come from all over the country, and the highest elevation is a landfill. So Florida holds no attraction to me whatsoever, but people love it. It's a nice place. So Florida would not be a destination for me, but a lot of South Africans would like it. A lot of South Africans would like Texas. But Texas, to me, has some upcoming political challenges in the state, and while it's lovely, it also has some miserable heat in the summertime, and it's huge. California is an amazing place run by morons, and they've degraded the quality of life and made it unaffordable to live in. That's why so many people leave the state. They can't afford the taxes and the expenses of living there. Also the poor governance. But it's a lovely place. I mean, there's beautiful places in California that are well run, but the state laws cause problems. I mean, for instance, California will give refuge to minor children who run away from their families instead of returning to them because they claim that they're transgender. And then they'll give them housing and supposedly protect them and basically kidnap your children if they can get to California. I have a problem with a state like that. Washington State in the Northwest is gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's also, in my view, the I-95 corridor, which is the main artery, which runs from Canada, Vancouver, through the state down to Oregon, where most of the state lives, is jam-packed full of people. It's overcrowded, in my view, but it's gorgeous. So I would say that if you were to ask me, based minus Wyoming, because none of you can move there. Places where you'd want to go as a South African that potentially have good employment opportunity, have good conservative values, and are places that you would fit in very well. I would say Florida would be one. Tennessee would be another place, and Utah. That would be the three places, if I was a South African, especially Utah, that I would want to go. Now, a lot of people don't like Utah because the Mormons are there, and they think they're going to try to convert them to Mormonism. But my experience with the Latter-day Saints Church is that if they come to you and prophesize you, and you politely tell them that you are not interested, you have another faith, and you appreciate their time, they'll leave you alone. That's been my experience, and they won't come back and bother you. I think you keep a database. Don't bug Chanell. We went to her house. I think to keep a database. They're very lovely people. The LDS, overwhelmingly law-abiding, respectful, conservative people who believe in God. A different approach to Christianity than most Christians, but and they work hard. They go abroad on their missions, so they're multilingual. Utah has linguists from and the Mormons aren't just in Utah, but that's the Desiree, the country they founded there. That's their heartland, their base. That's where the temple is in Salt Lake City. And so the Mormons are good people, and Utah is an amazing state, and a lot of it looks like South Africa. It's got high desert chaparral. It's got mountains like the Drakensberg, except higher than Drakensberg. Great skiing, fantastic job environment, high tech, medicine, DNA research. Wonderful place. I'd say Utah. Tennessee is an amazing place, but of course Tennessee also has Memphis, which is one of the murder capitals of America. So stay away from Memphis. But Nashville's lovely, or you can go to East Tennessee, which is absolutely gorgeous, and it's so that's. But wherever you're going to go, you're going to wind up in a place that we're intending to set you up for success. And by the way, you're not stuck there. You don't have to stay there. And we already have a couple that went to Iowa that were offered a very good opportunity for both of them to work in a poultry farm in Kentucky. I interviewed them earlier this year. They're in Kentucky. They're doing well. They just picked up and moved. They lost their refugee services locally. I never got back in touch to find out if they picked up refugee services in Kentucky, but they're doing fine. Charles went to Buffalo, New York. You want to talk about cold? You South Africans will die. The moment winter arrives in Buffalo, you will just literally stand there and fall over and die. That is the coldest place on earth I've ever been. Buffalo, New York, because the wind comes off the lake and the snow comes in there, and I lived in Buffalo. It's freezing. I was cold. I'm a Viking. I was cold. So you'll die in Buffalo. So he realized that. So he went to South Dakota because he had a job offer, and he has a home, and he has transportation, and he's doing well out there working as a farmer, which is what he wanted to do. And a few other people have moved. Now, a few people have asked for advice. A couple went to Maryland, and their elderly parents are coming over, and they asked should they move. And I said, well, I would recommend you don't move, because where you're talking about going, you have no promise of anything. And you're going to lose your refugee services, and you don't really know the country yet, and you're waiting for your parents to come. So what's it going to be like if you pick up and go from Maryland to, I don't know, let's say it was Kansas. You go to Kansas, which is lovely too, by the way. It's also conservative. It's in the Midwest. And Nebraska is also a nice place, but they're kind of, in my view, desolate, and they're like the Free State. It's just wide open spaces. I'm not beating by the Free State. I like the Free State anyway. But anyway, so they were going to move, and then their parents are going to come over and be put in the same place they were. I'm like, why don't you wait for your elderly parents to get there, get established a few months, get everything underway, get comfortable with what's going on. Once they arrive, if you want to move, then just go move. All right. So, yeah, I think that answers that question.
Okay. And those were all my questions. And what I can gather, Charmaine's questions. I'm not sure if she had anything else.
Yeah, she said a real bad connection.
She has problems with her Wi-Fi. So, but that is it, Colonel.
All right. Well, before you go, stick with me for a few minutes so I can get your reaction, so I'm not just talking to the screen, okay? All right. You can stay a little bit longer, yes?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so JJ Pretoria, I can't get all the questions, guys, because they were asking questions of me, but I'm getting a few of them that came up lately. So JJ Pretoria says, if you fill in a statement of interest, how do you get picked? There's no address field. How am I living on a farm differentiated from someone in Pretoria? It's not differentiated. See, JJ, you got to suspend the cockprot media and the lies told about Trump. This is not a farmer program. This is not a Afrikaner program. This is a program for racial minorities suffering from unjust racial discrimination. Done and dusted, finished and clar. It doesn't matter whether you live on a farm. Most people come over don't live on farms. Very few of them are actually farmers. This is the bullshit that the media fed to people from the beginning, and they still feed. Donald Trump keeps talking about it. Donald Trump's not talking about a white genocide in South Africa. He raised the issue of the context the government was doing bad things. Stealing people's property with a law is immoral. That's a bad thing. Not respecting property rights undermines the safety and security of a nation. Trump is right about that. He used the term genocide once or twice publicly because it came up. When asked the question at the Oval Office meeting in May with a South African journalist setting him up for failure, Mr. President, Now that President Ramaphosa is here, do you still believe there's a white genocide in South Africa? And what was his response? I'm not convinced of that. The media lied to you. Stop listening to him. This is not a farmer program. This is not to fill our country full of farmers. This is not to fill our country full of avocados. Although a lot of people in the Trump administration are running around like, yeah, we're trying to repopulate America with white people. Trust me, if we brought every Afrikaner over here, you people could knock boots enough to save our white population from declining. It's not declining. The white population in this country is not declining. White people, when I was born in this country, when I was born in when I was born back then, there were approximately 169, 180 million people in this country. 89% were white. You do the math. So that's 89 million plus another 40 million or so. About 139, 140 million people were white. Today, America has 240 million white people. Now, how did that happen? According to Nota Boloye, white women are genetically inferior and can't carry children. How do we increase? It wasn't Germans coming here. It wasn't the English coming here. It was white people in this country knocking boots with white people and reproducing. So we don't need Afrikaners and white South Africans to keep our white population from being diminished. Your 5,000, 7,000, 10,000, 100,000, 500,000 will not change the demographics of this country. It will enrich our country by bringing a new culture that people can become familiar with and you can assimilate and bring the values. And maybe one day, 100 years from now, everybody will be eating droevoors and biltong. It'll be more popular than beef jerky. And God forbid, they're eating Cook sisters. So anyway, stop listening to the fake media, JJ. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter if you're a millionaire. Rob Herself could qualify for this program if he wants to. And last I heard, Rob's got a couple dollars in the bank. I'm just saying. All right. So don't listen to that. And the question in California, where's it at? Someone asked about California. It disappeared again. I wanted to get that. Hang on a second here. I'm sorry. It disappeared. But single guy, I had a maid, paid her $500 a day, 2 times a month. They also gave her Christmas bonus. And okay, well, that's nice, Theo. I don't have domestic help. I do the work myself, which is getting harder with the hip. Anyway, there was a California question. I'm trying to find it, but I'm not seeing it here. I'm not going to be able to get to all these questions, and I don't want to keep her any longer. All right. Yeah, anyway, so the California question, if they tell you you're going to California, then go to California. They're going to put you in a place where you should be okay. If you're not okay, send me an email. My mods put my email up here all the time, and every day I get hundreds of more emails. I get through as many as I can. Today, since I'm not doing the news, I'll probably get through some emails after this before I do the refugee. But I'll be back at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. South African time for the refugee chat, and I'll answer these questions if I didn't answer them during that time because that's what that time is for. We do it every Sunday, and it eats into my Sunday, but it's important. The Weatherman just gave $2 super chat. Jerry is cock. Who is Jerry? I have no idea who Jerry is. Weatherman, thank you for that. Okay, and Gus says hip replacement works. Yeah, but I like factory installed equipment. I'll leave it at, jerky. Jerky is cock. Hey, who's Jerry? Beef jerky. Okay, gotcha. I gotcha. Okay, that's a matter of opinion. It's a big seller in America, so Americans like it. But wait till they get introduced to biltong a little bit more. All right, yeah, it auto-corrected, I'm sure. Okay, so Chanell, apologies to the audience that we lost Charmaine. We had her for a bit, but bad connection. It was becoming too difficult. I think Chanell did a great job. And by the way, she did that hairstyle just for me. No, not style. She had her hair done. Anyway, so I'm honored by that. But anyway, so I think I've answered all the questions I can. Listen, no promises, but let me think about it, and you think about it too. Maybe periodically, I don't know, maybe once a month or something like that, or maybe more frequent if it works out. If you're getting a lot of questions in your Facebook page that you guys are not comfortable answering and you want them answered, maybe I could either have you pop in the refugee chat, or maybe we do a shorter session, not a 2.5 hour session, and talk about this. What do you think?
Absolutely. That would be amazing. Yes.
Okay. And this is the first time you've ever done something like this, yes?
Well, I'm an online teacher.
Yeah, but that's
so
different.
I teach online, but I've done a Facebook Live once, but that was like 4 years ago. So I was thinking maybe I should have a drink before we did this, but this is only water. I promise you. So
I had some amarula the other night.
Amazing.
All right, cool beans.
Yes.
All right.
But thank you so much, Colonel, for taking the time to answer the questions that have been answered, and like you always say, beaten to death. But I hope our members, could find maybe settle their anxiety a little bit more.
So there's a question here. What does she teach? She teaches English as a second language, which has raised a question for me. Are you an English South African or an Afrikaner?
Well,
Or are you mixed?
I'm a mixed breed, yes.
Okay, all right. Well, which is what many are. Many people have English surnames. I mean, and they have like John Smith. What is John Smith? It should be Johann Schmidt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a lot of that. No, but she teaches English as a second language. All right. So obviously she knows English. Okay. All right. Well, let's go from there. Thank you very much. I'll let you drop off, Chanell. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for asking me to do this.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And also, thank you to you and Chanell for your patience. Charmaine, excuse me, you and Charmaine for your patience, because I was overwhelmed with events the past 3 days, finishing up my consulting, and then the Veterans Organization. I had to go in and sack people who were working in front of a bar. It was unpleasant, and it ate up hours of my time. And then yesterday we had something going on. I had to go in there. What's with my hair here? There's a little piece of hair sticking out. Anyway, and
you
so
just do this.
No, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Anyway, so I mean, I didn't get back. They asked to do this. I said, what about Sunday at 10 a.m. my time, 4 p.m. South that time? They were patient. They didn't pester me. They wrote again this morning and said, hey, can we still doing it? I was up and I was intending to do it, but I was worried that I had waited too long, and I saw they're there, so I sent them a link and they showed up, and I do appreciate it. It is possible that I set up something and then I get distracted and don't forget about it. But in this case, I didn't forget about you guys. I just didn't have time to do it, and I needed some rest. Anyway, so thank you for coming out. I think it was beneficial to everybody. Please tell us again what your Facebook group is for the tunnies who are, and that includes the men who are 35 who hang out on Facebook. Only tunnies hang out on Facebook, and 12-year-old girls. But so tell us where to find you on Facebook.
Now you're asking me a question. Wait, let me
Okay,
just.
it looks
I know
like-
that.
it looks
I
like
know.
Hendo-
I know the name of my group.
I think
let me
Hendo
get
just
it
put the link
correct.
there. I think Hendo just put
Okay, did he?
Yeah, he
Okay,
just
perfect.
put the link there. Yep.
The Freedom Path Africana Refugees USA.
Yep, there it is. Okay, it wants to know if I'm a robot. Damn it. Stupid Meta. Are you a robot? No, I'm not a robot. Those are on street corners. And now I've entered the wrong password. Oh, bite me. Bite me, Facebook. I hate Facebook. Anyway, I've changed the password. Yeah.
Robots cannot grow legend beards like Colonel Wyatt.
There you go.
I'm sorry. There we go. Awesome. Thank you so much, Colonel. Have a fantastic Sunday. And to everyone who joined, thank you very much. We had like literally almost 200 people just join our group throughout the session. So thank you.
So,
yes.
Chanell, that also, very quickly, let me digress. That goes to a point that I've been making all along. The reason I want my channel to be large isn't for fame or fortune. If that comes, that's lovely. It's not a problem. I've been famous before, and it's not all it's cracked up to be. It's because it's the reach. The bigger you are, the more reach you have, the more people you can reach. And so, see what happened? You just almost doubled the size of your group because of the reach of this group here. And yeah, so that's amazing. That's why we want more subscribers. We want more people to know about it, because we don't have the reach of the Washington Post or News 24 or Daily Maverick or the New York Times, but we should, because we tell the truth. All right.
Yes.
Cool beans.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, folks, that was Charmaine and Chanell who came on the program. They reached out to me, and they were very clear. They said, we understand that you're telling people not to join groups, that you don't like them, but they told me what their group was about. I said, well, let's do it. We'll take a flyer. We'll talk to them, and we'll see what they talk about. And they wanted to approach from a different standpoint. They had questions from their group, and they wanted to ask me the questions directly. And so I thought, that's pretty cool. So that's what we did. And maybe we'll follow up with that again in the future. I'm not endorsing their Facebook page. I'm also not trashing it. I can't see it right now because Facebook said it was the wrong password, so I got to go find the correct password. But I'm just saying that that was interesting. And even if you don't go check out their page, which I'm agnostic about whether you do it or don't do it, I'm not encouraging you. I do say that I would like for you to, I like what we did here, and maybe we can answer the questions. So very quickly, if one of my mods could put the link up to Charles Van Onslin's Backup Buddy, since I got over 500 people here still at the moment, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, if you have the resource to help a fellow South African out. Charles, his medical aid will not cover his entire cost of his medical procedure, which is desperately needed. And I joke with Charles and I say he's bum hurt, because he is bum hurt, but he needs 80,000. And whoops, that's not what I wanted. And we have tried to help Charles. He had 200 Rand when we started. He's at 19,000 Rand, so 1/4 of the way there. Phoenix just gave 1,000 Rand a couple days ago. Nobody's donated for 2 days. So if one of my mods could put that link up, and there it is. Hendo put it up. Thank you, Hendo. 19,084. I don't usually shill and ask for people to give money to other people. We've done it for a little deaf girl. We've done it to help someone repair their bucky. We do it on occasion. Charles has been a long viewer of this program, And we call him the voice of reason because he's a voice of reason. He's a former municipal employee for the city of Durban, and his medical aid doesn't cover all of this. He's also been persecuted racially, denied promotions given to people unqualified below him to move above him, and he didn't complain about it. He did his job until he retired, and Charles's medical aid doesn't cover all this, despite what the Sunnyside detective says. So if you can help out, it'd be much appreciated. Yep. And if you can help Charles get to that 80,000 so he can get that surgery that he needs to make his bum feel better. If you want to make his bum feel better, you can help out Charles. And I know Charles takes it's just a light ribbing, but we're trying to help him raise money. So we're up at 19,000. There have been some very generous donations, including a Rhino Girl and Dogzilla, who gave some very generous donations, and others who gave 1,000 Rand and more. So thank you for that. If any frequently asked questions site for the refugee program, Beast Mode JJ, you go watch them. Go to the playlist for my channel. Watch the videos from February, and they answer questions. But it would be foolhardy and legally questionable to make a list of frequently asked questions and write them down because it becomes actionable. So go watch my videos which explain things. All right, that's the best I can offer for you. Okay, you won't end up in a bad state with lots of Democrats. Yeah. It's medical. Well, medical insurance. I said medical aid. Some people call their insurance aid and stuff that. Well, here we call it insurance. Yeah. So that's what we call it. We call it insurance here. So sorry, I misspoke. Anyway, but you guys are welcome. Thanks for being here. I'll be back in about an hour and 20 minutes. We'll do the refugee chat for this evening. I'll skip the news today. I'll mention a little bit of the news at the start of the refugee chat. People can indulge me for that since I missed it. Okay. This was a 2-hour and 40-minute stream, and we've had 4,500 people show up. Thank you all very much. And I'll see you in a bit. And thank you for being here. I need to go get some food. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten. I'm getting hangry here. I'm getting hangry. So we'll see you guys shortly, okay? Thanks for being here, folks. God bless and take care.